Awesome. Well, on that note, let's kick off. So welcome. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Belinda Moore. I've been working in association land for over 30 years, and a lot of my work is around membership models, research in that space, research into what makes associations high performing, and writing lots of books and white papers on that, as well as consulting and strategic planning, that kind of thing. So here comes some more. Now, today is not the same as the membership models webinar I ran 2 months ago. If you're after a presentation where you can sit there passively and just hear about membership models, then I can send you the recording of that and happy to do so. Today is actually the follow-up workshop for that, where we get to talk about what your problems are and actually come up with some concrete solutions so that you walk away with practical information that you can actually use, rather than me just making a guess at what a group of people want to hear about today. So not a lecture, it's a workshop. There's no silly questions. Now, if you can open up your chat, I'm really happy for people to talk in the chat as well, to be able to ask any questions that they might have or make any comments as we go through. Now, importantly, because I know I get very passionate about membership models and I'll often assume a certain level of knowledge. If you feel like it's moving too quickly, or if you need me to explain something, or if I, as I do occasionally use an acronym that you're not familiar with, please ask, please speak up, because if you're feeling that way, everybody's probably feeling that way. So now what we're going to do is I'm going to ask you the question I warned most of you about shortly, where I'm going to go around and get you each to introduce yourselves, and your name, organization, and how would you describe your membership model in one word. But then after that, I'm actually going to get us to go around the room and tell me, what is it you want to get from today? So have a think about those two questions. We'll start with the easy one. Now, if everyone's got their screens on, I'll just check and make sure we're not missing anyone from the room here. I have about a gazillion screens open because I'm not quite sure what we're going to be using today. But alrighty, we've got everyone open in front of me. Let's start. And Kylie, you're the lucky one at the top left-hand side of my screen. Name, organization, and membership model in one word.
Sure. My name's Kylie. I'm from Christian Venues Association. And I would say our membership model is steady. I don't know if that's right, but that's what I'm going with.
Steady?
Yep.
That's all right. Excellent. Elise.
Hey, Elise. Sorry, Elise from AMA SA, so based in Adelaide. I am the marketing, membership and events manager. I would say that our membership model is complicated.
Complicated. Okay. And I do agree. Okay, Tessa, would you like to go next?
Hi everyone, I'm Tess. I'm the co-CEO of Myotherapy Australia. In one word, our association membership would be, I would say, outdated.
I hear that a lot. Chris, what about yourself?
Good morning. I'm Chris, General Manager, Strategy and Member Experience at the Migration Institute of Australia. And yeah, I was going to say antiquated and outdated, but now that I think about it, it's probably like primitive is probably like a good word, because, right, there's other things out there. And I think it's, more simple, I think, in terms of what we could be doing. So, yeah.
Lisa?
I'm Lisa Fraser, General Manager of Strategy Engagement from the Queensland Trucking Association. Our membership model is large, complex and large.
I hear that a lot too. Wonderful. Alison, how about yourself?
Hi, so I'm Alison Williams. I'm General Manager of Member Experience at the Australian Psychological Society. I don't want to say complex. It's not complex. It is resistant to change, perhaps, or could be simplified.
Yes. Cool. Serge, would you just introducing our name, where we're from, and if we could describe our membership model in one word?
Hi, I'm Serge Burjak. I'm the IT Manager for Finance Brokers Association of Australia. There's actually two of us on here today from our organisation. Peak member body for inducting finance brokers.
And if you had to describe your model in your membership model in one word, what would it be?
Interesting.
Awesome. And Avi from the same organisation.
I am, yes. I would say complicated from our members' point of view. So
Complicated. Yep. Brendan, how about yourself? Oh, you just on mute. I'm taking notes as we go. So what's your name, your organisation, and if you could describe your membership model in one word? Oh, you're still on mute?
Apologies, there we go. So yeah, name is Brendan Gray from Engage, which is an engineering manufacturing cluster based in Invercargill in New Zealand. And our current membership model is non-existent. So we don't have one yet.
Okay. Well, that's good. You get the fresh start. A lot of us
Yeah,
are building a
absolutely.
legacy.
Absolutely.
Now, Rachel, are you there? Rachel has mentioned she might have someone coming in. Lou, how about yourself? That's all right.
Hi,
Sure,
Belinda. Sorry, I'm just in the car on my way to join when I get home.
That's okay.
So Louise Harlan Cox, I'm the CEO of Communication and Public Relations Australia. We represent comms and PR professionals across a variety of sectors. One word, outdated.
Yeah. Unfortunately, that's the word I hear a lot is, you know, outdated, antiquated. The primitive was a new one.
I think it's just ticked along as it was, and no one's ever questioned it, and it hasn't been updated in a very long time.
Well, most membership models are an accident of history. When you ask people why they have the current membership model they do, it's just like, well, it's always been that way, and it's kind of evolved in a really ad hoc and not necessarily strategically considered manner. So it looks like we've got a really broad cross-section of people in the room. Now, as I said at the beginning, I don't want to sit here and repeat the webinar that I gave 2 months ago on the whole framework of membership models, because I think what we want to get today is some practical insights for you that you can take away and implement straight away. So I actually have my notes up here on the screen, and what I'd like to do is to go back around the room, now that we all know who's here, and have everybody share what's the problem that you are coming here to solve today. What is it you want to actually get out of this session? And as we go, I'm going to create the agenda. I have lots of resources here. I can show you things and we can talk it through, but this way we make sure the agenda is geared to exactly what you guys want to get out of it. So now I'm not going to necessarily call you out in an order for this, and I've got 3 big screens here, which is why I'm looking around. I'm going to let you go in the order that you're comfortable. Who would like to share why they're here first? What's the problem you want my help to solve today?
I'll start.
Go for it.
Whilst our membership model would be considered steady, I think we're hoping to evolve it. So what I'm looking for ways is how to bring members along for that journey and make it a positive experience.
Taking people on the journey of the membership model evolution.
Yeah.
That's a big one. Now, at the moment, do you have a proposed membership model in place, or are you talking about taking them on the journey from starting a review through to implementing any changes?
We're in the process of review, so it's probably more through the implementation of changes.
Okay. All right, that's the fun end of it. All right, thank you. You've given us a good one. So this is about specifically transition.
Yep.
All right, who'd like to go next?
Serge.
Yep, go for it, Serge.
Just like to see what other people are doing, see what best practice is. We have a very dynamic sort of membership system, and that involves a lot of changes and a lot of costs. So just like to see how other people may handle it. We are a not-for-profit, not a charity, so we have to be careful with members' money.
I think just about everyone in the room here would have not-for-profit status as an association. So yes, you're amongst friends with that. When you say it's costly, is it costly in terms of the cost of your membership systems, the staff resources? What is that cost that you're talking about?
I guess our requirements change to join the organisation from time to time, and we have to redevelop the software to do that. So yeah, I don't know, Amy may or may not disagree with me, but we should get her point of view as well. That's the way I see it.
Awesome. So we're talking about some foundations there. And I just see Rachel's popped hers straight into the chat, which is how we move from really complicated membership model to a simpler one, especially with the fees. You got multiple categories and multiple levels. Yes, I've gone through a few of these. 54 options when you consider all of the variables. That is truly terrifying. So we will talk more about that. I just wanted to highlight Nancy's just joined the room. Hi, Nancy. How are you going?
Hi, sorry, I was having a bit of tech difficulties, so I popped out for a sec, but hello, everyone.
If you just want to introduce your name, position, and where you're from, just so everybody knows who's in the room.
Okay. Hi, my name is Nancy, and I'm from the Migration Institute of Australia.
Excellent. Now, I'm going to put you on the spot for this one at the start, but I'll just let you know what we're doing now is sharing why you're actually here. This is a free-form program, which means I'm going to hear what everyone wants to learn, and then we're going to put it in logical order, go through from top to bottom to address everything. So we've heard from Serge, Kylie, and Rachel. Who'd like to go next?
Yeah, I'll go next.
Yeah, go for it.
So yeah, obviously looking at establishing a membership model, we're 1 year young in our operation to establish an engineering manufacturing cluster in New Zealand. So we've got a draft which we obtained from HunterNet, and I'm not sure some of the Australian people on board might know of HunterNet, a well-established cluster of 32 plus years. So we have the draft membership model, but I guess, yeah, I just looking at the ways that we develop that into our own. Don't want to overcomplicate things from the start off, don't want to scare people off. So just tips, tricks, and ways that we can develop that membership model to become our own.
Excellent. All right. So that's, getting in from the start. What are the basic factors for a good model? Excellent. We can cover that. I see Lou's here put into the chat that we've been through a lot of changes, including a rebrand and a new constitution. Understand what's going to work going forward. Now, that's a really interesting one because often the constitutional review comes after a membership model review. So let's have a look at the different models. So different models available. We can definitely do that. All righty. Thanks, Lou. And who'd like to go next?
Yeah, I'll go next. I said we're complicated. We have over 30 different levels, so we have lots of different levels, but as range from a student to a retired or life member. So we've got like lots of associations. We've got lots of diverse groups, but we have a federal arm as well. So I think understanding how we can streamline our membership and work with and have support from a federal arm at the same time, because what we do has to feed back into what we do across Australia as well. So if we can learn some best practice and come up with a better model for us in SA, but get the support from our federal arm to review and simplify.
So review and simplify are very, very common calls to action. So awesome. We can do all of that. Who'd like to go next?
I'm happy to go
next. You go, Alison, it's fine.
Thanks, Lisa. So I've come from a marketing background and I'm now doing member experience. So I want to come in with a best practice mentality about how we can look after our members. Our members complain about a lot of noise, so is it coming from us? Is it coming from our member groups? So I just kind of want to understand the models, work towards roadmaps if we're going to make change, how we start that conversation. We've got some people that will not change and then people that really want change. And so how we sort of create that transition. So I'd just love to know, yeah, what's going on trend wise and what my focus should be.
And if I recall, you're Psychological Society, correct?
Yeah.
So you have quite a strong network of because I actually know most of the organisations in this room fairly well. You got a lot of special interest groups. I don't think you call them that, but and they're quite influential within your governance frameworks, decision-making frameworks, etc.
Yes.
One of the things then that I want to make sure we talk about for yours, because what you're talking about here in your roadmap, your component strategy, so how you manage all of the subgroups in that transition is absolutely critical. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to put you under a heading of components, because for you that's going to be a fundamental one, and we have done so much work in that space.
Wonderful. Thank you.
So excellent. Thank you. That's good.
Can I just very, very quickly share? We were about to deliver a rebrand, and one of those components is currently on pause and out for consultation. So our own membership has stopped a significant part of rebrand.
So that's
it's fine. It's absolutely fine. It just means that we need to have a consultation strategy, which it's all fine. It's just that's the complexity we face.
Yeah, you do. And it is hard. I'm working with a couple of organisations at the moment who have extensive special interest group networks, divisions, branches, that kind of thing.
Yep.
And it does add a very different facet to membership model reviews. Serge, you want to, yes, I actually would suggest that even setting up a WhatsApp group, because membership models, almost everybody's going through this at the moment. You're absolutely not alone. And these themes that are coming out are so common. You could almost have a support group for it. But okay, so that's really interesting, Alison. We will definitely be covering a lot on that. I've got that into there. Now, Lisa, did you say you want to go next?
Yep. Our membership model looks simple, but there's lots of levels within the categories. So, and we have categories within categories. It's an historical pricing model based on the number of trucks that people have registered. It could be, I'm wondering whether it could be simplified into more small, medium, large, rather than 1, 2 to 3, 5 to whatever. So the pricing model is historical. Don't have any idea how it's priced. So yeah, just considering whether or not it can be simplified.
You've got a similar one to Nat Road, where it's on a per truck basis, isn't it, for every additional truck?
I think so, yeah.
Okay. I've worked extensively with trucking, not just in Australia, but in other areas. So I know exactly where you're at. In small, medium, and large, it's good, but they don't like the language. So often I've done a number of trucks. So sole operator, 3 to 10 trucks, 11 to 20 seems to be a really popular pathway for that, because you can simplify it. And also those different groups, each category has different needs. So we'll talk about using intuitive categorization, where you can actually differentiate the value. So it means people default to the category that's appropriate for them.
Yeah, and also I guess how that's linked to the way we market because there's particular reasons why the different, say, small, medium, large people would join us. So correlating the membership categories to the marketing of the different size businesses.
It's absolutely critical to have, sort of jumping in, but intuitive categorization says, what are our main market segments? And why don't we make our market segments our membership categories? Because that way, if you had a market segment which is small operators or large operators, they got completely different needs from each other. One-man band versus a big corporate entity. And then you can actually tailor the membership benefits to that, because there's nowhere is it written that all membership benefits need to go to every member. You can actually give them what they need and price it commensurately. We'll talk about that as we go through today, because this is a journey a lot of people are on, because the very complex categorization can often be simplified quite easily. So I've added that.
And just one other thing I wanted to say was members that we consider large, they consider themselves sort of medium. because they might be comparing themselves to a Linfox or Toll or something like that. So that end of town is like mega in our land. So
Oh, yes, absolutely. And that's why we don't use labels like small, medium, and large.
yeah,
Instead, we might say 10 to 20 trucks. Because
yeah,
that way you can intuitively know, and there's no judgment. Like categories like associate member, affiliate member, full member, standard member, they're going out the window because they carry an inherent bias. If one person is a full member, another person is an associate, which one's better? Whereas if you use intuitive labels like number of trucks or student or retired, those kind of labels, they simply state a fact. And without that bias, it makes it much easier to market. So we'll cover that as we go through as well, because that's a
Yeah.
really critical element to get right. I see Elisa's put in a question around annual versus monthly memberships. Now, Elise, can I ask, there's two different types of, well, actually there's lots, but two main types of monthly memberships. There's a subscription model where you dial in, dial out. So picture LinkedIn. Then you've got the direct debit model, which says, actually, no, you've committed to an annualized membership, but you can pay it in monthly installments. When you say monthly, which are you referring to?
Yeah, the second, so monthly installments. So that's all automated. They roll over every year. There might be a fee increase. We notify them in December. January, they're normally quite happy because they're monthly payers, so they don't notice a significant increase in any fees. It's the annual payers. We've got the model at the moment where we've got a split of 40% annual, 70%, 60% monthly, that we have to manually chase them or ask them to go in and renew, update details, and we do experience a drop-off, and that's federal, that's across the country. So does anyone else experience that? Or automation's obviously key, but there's obviously barriers to that as well, or is there not barriers, and it's something we need to explore?
I'm really interested in that too, actually. Hi, everyone. Sorry, I was in transit before. Very interested in that in terms of moving towards monthly options and automation and what that looks like, if anyone else has already got that underway.
As a general rule, we strongly recommend monthly direct debit for an annualized commitment. And the reason for this is, first, the evidence and the research strongly supports this. If you look at the marketing general membership benchmarks, just as a start, what they show is that if you put somebody onto a monthly direct debit, where, like your insurance renewal, at the end of the year, you get the notice saying, the new fee for this year is this, it'll continue to roll over, your next direct debit is this amount on this date, people have to take action not to renew. So first of all, you're able to leverage apathy, and people just being lazy will renew. So you get a net increase in your retention rate from that. But the other thing is it changes the buying decision. I might say to you, the membership is $600 a year. Now, you may want to join more than anything, but you just may not have physically $600 at that particular time. But if I say to you it's $50 a month, it changes the buying decision. You're much more likely to be able to find $50 to ensure your membership is covered. So it's a completely different buying experience that you've got. Now, monthly direct debit is a lovely way to get the benefits, or most of the benefits, of a subscription model without the risk that somebody's going to leave 3 months in. So a lot of associations are shifting across. The biggest issue that we're finding, and this is time and time again, and I still remember, and this is many years ago when the AMA Queensland first tried it, there was an issue because the credit card details change, bank account details change, and the updating was, to put it frankly, a giant pain in the ass. And so some associations went into it and then pulled back, or went into it but didn't commit to it in a way where they really tried to move their membership across because they didn't want to deal with that. So what did they do? There's two different strategies, and people can use both, to help overcome that resource intensiveness of it. One is to put procedures and policies around the management of it. So what people did is built into their system something that would identify when a credit card is about to expire in a month or two, and it triggers an email that says, we notice your credit card details are about to expire. Please click here to update your details. And then it does reminders until those details are updated. And after a certain number of reminders, it actually prompts the staff member to pick up the phone and call. So though that's an example of some of the triggers that you can put in to really minimize the amount of staff time. Other triggers are if it bounces, it prompts for a staff member to call after a series of emails to that particular member. There are places that you can outsource to, places like EasyDebit, and I say that name simply because it's the first one to pop to my head. It's not in any way an endorsement because I haven't personally used those services. Now, one of the things to be aware of with those services is it's not really regulated, which means that the price difference and the service difference for the same amount of money can be quite variable. So if you are looking at using any of the external providers, and there are some great ones out there, and there's also some shockers, I would ask around and find out who's using them, what experience they're having, and get several quotes from different organizations to understand that you're getting the best service at the right price. Does that make sense? I highly recommend if you go to the Marketing General website, subscribe and download their annual benchmarks. They come out around July every year, and it's a great way to be able to benchmark how you're doing on retention, recruitment, what's working, what's not. Noting that you know, it's generally American statistics, they're not perfect, but you know, it's a place, but there's not a lot of research out there. Sorry to go off, but that is a really common question to have. Next, who else hasn't shared yet?
I can go if you like. Well, I'm very similar to what you've just spoken about. We've always been on an annual renewal basis. We have some difficulties with the automation portion of that it doesn't directly connect with our membership database system. So currently, once the invoice goes out, it's paid, it all automates, but our web developers cannot automate into that system. So I'd love to hear what kind of automation systems people are using. And our second struggle is that our memberships are tied in with the members' public and professional indemnity insurance. We have a master policy for them, and it's also tied into their practicing health fund provider numbers. So if they're non-financial, it does void both of those, and it becomes a very resource-heavy task for our very small team. That if a member becomes non-financial in October, but then in December pays, we've actually had to cancel their provider numbers, and it takes up to 8 weeks to get those reinstated. So it becomes a little bit of a tricky process, but we would like to see kind of how we can breach that and put some automation in place to maybe help in that area, because our members very much need it, and I think it's very much offered in every other aspect of their life. So we would love to move towards that. It's just finding ways that I can manage the resourcing on our very small team.
So, and so I had to get up. I have a small puppy who was scratching at the door. If I didn't let her in, she was just going to rip the door down. So
that's okay.
Yes, and the puppy tax. She's happy now. So what you're talking about there with the PI insurance, it's been called traditionally golden handcuffs. When you got a deal so good that someone would be stupid not to be a member. And the other thing you're talking about is what happens if someone leaves and having to cancel their provider number. First of all, congratulations on being able to have that ability that if someone leaves, their provider number gets cancelled, because a lot of associations traditionally have struggled. In the 30 years I've been in associations, it's been an issue for the insurer to actually connect a penalty of the person not renewing their membership. However, how early in the process do you start your renewals? How many months before the renewal is due?
In terms of, do we start it in-house or? Yeah, so we essentially are currently working on finalising any kind of membership changes, putting together all the processes with our insurance companies. So most of it will be finalised with us by, I would say, early Feb, and then our members by 1st of April will kind of receive all of their memberships with a June final date.
June final, okay, because when you've got this kind of what affects their business very intimately, penalty, we normally say absolutely 90 days prior would be the latest that we'd send out the renewal notice. Do you have some pretty solid automation saying your provider number is going to be cancelled, all of that in place?
Yeah, we currently have that for professional development in terms of their first aid. So that's all automated currently, and it's just then figuring out how we can automate a very similar system in the payment side of things. So there is some present.
And what's your grace period like?
So grace period with insurance is a 30-day period, and private health just varies on each individual private health fund. Some of them there is absolutely no grace period once you're expired first aid or non-financial.
And how much do you charge for a reinstatement?
Currently it's only a $7 admin fee for reinstatement, but it's not religiously charged at this point.
So one of the things that can help in that, there's two areas. One, in case of severe financial hardship, having some kind of thing that says, if you're in severe financial hardship, contact us. But the other thing is increasing the penalty. Due to the amount of staff time it takes, there's a $150 penalty for reinstate, not even a penalty, fee to reinstate. Because sometimes the application, and it's got to be charged through, because when you charge it and people realize it's going to be charged, they realize they're going to save money by renewing on time. So you don't have to do it too many times for word to get around. You will get some really cranky members, but otherwise people will push it. I know an association that had a 1-year grace period on their renewals, and there are quite a number of members that just renewed every second year. If there's a loophole, people will find it. So yes, and the resource, the need to automate is really critical as we go through here. And I'm going to talk to you about a few different ways that you can streamline what your operations are as we go through. But before that, who hasn't shared theirs yet?
Oh, that would be me, one of them. So yeah, I think we're sort of at that review stage, or not even at that. I think I'm, here to sort of just get ideas. I like what I know that it's probably not the purpose that it was designed for was like long ago, so it doesn't suit the purpose now. So I think trying to get a membership model that is in line with the mission and the strategy, and that is quite sustainable. Obviously there's like pricing, there's building out kind of what exactly that was Liz that was talking about in terms of the benefits for certain like our members, our corporate members, for example. So we kind of have that same exact thing there, where it's just a discount. It's not actually like a particular value proposition there aside from the discounts in terms of how many members each corporate member would have. And then yeah, I think someone mentioned it there, but just bringing probably the CEO and the board along and kind of just explaining why it's important, because I guess there is just that lack of knowledge, the association or membership knowledge where I'm at now, and sort of want to be able to link that up to what we're trying to do, because it is very important. And being able to communicate that and get that buy-in, I think at the very early stages before we even sort of talk about changing the membership model, I think just sort of sensitizing the membership to it, in fact, and the board and the CEO to that. So that's kind of what I want to sort of get some insights into starting out.
Yeah, and it's good if everybody realizes there's a problem that needs to be solved from the board down to the general membership. And sometimes, yeah, I'll talk more about how you can bring people along on the journey, because it feels like it slows it down, but it actually speeds it up. So I'll pop that. I've got you into there. Review, simplify, setting up. Excellent. I've got a slide for this. Who wants to go next?
I think I haven't gone.
Yeah.
So I have been in membership for over a year. So I come from a real estate background. So I still consider myself a little bit new to membership. But I come from the MIA. So I'd say my goals and I guess what I want to take out of today would kind of align with Chris as well. But today is my first workshop, so I'm quite open to learning everything today. Something in particular that I do want to kind of learn about is more, I think, a little bit of what Lisa was saying, which was about learning the different automation systems and what we can do to, I guess, automate, and yeah, what associations are currently using at the moment.
Awesome. Excellent. Well, we're going to cover that. I will talk about membership databases and automation systems because it is so critical as we move through. I've got a whole section there to talk about that, and I will ask people to share what they're using and what they think about it. Chatham House rules. because I know there's one or two providers out there are quite litigious if people speak badly about them. All right. Now I see Lisa's got someone with her. She can't answer any questions. Is there anyone else you'd like to share? Or even have a repeat if there's something that's not come up that they want to go through? All right. Well, there's heaps there for us to go through. So let's start at the top. First of all, can I ask, who here saw the webinar I delivered to you 2 months ago on the paper that came out? Is that a general, did anybody see that? Because if not, then I'm going to have to start, we'll start at the top and cover a couple of these.
I read through the paper, but didn't watch the webinar.
Okay, no, that's all right. That's okay. Don't expect everybody to do that. So what I'm going to do is I will actually, and to keep this much more informal, I'm not going to set it up into formal webinar mode, but I am going to show the, I'm going to go through just some of the foundation elements of that webinar so that we're all on the same page, because there are some basic things that are critical that we understand before we can move forward through some of these questions. But I will stop where I've got to the questions and we'll address the specific questions that have come up. So can everyone see that on the screen? It's all right. So I guess there's the background about me. You'll get a link to the recording. So when it comes down to membership models, associations have existed for as long as humans have. Because if you strip it all back, all an association is a group of people coming together to advance a cause of common interest, whether it's a profession, whether it's an industry sector, whether it's a cause, that's all it is. Now, we're very used to these models that have existed for hundreds of years and thousands if you extend into the guilds of Rome, where you come together collectively hundreds of years for a financial membership. And it's because it's what we're used to. It's what we think is the only option. But when it comes down to it, there are so many different ways to act collectively. And the frameworks that we're all used to are only one option for that. So when we talk about how membership models are evolving, we need to look at it that bigger, from that larger perspective, because with the way that digital tools are evolving, the way that humans communicate that are evolving, what associations are going to look like in 50 years from now is going to be quite different from now. The problem that we have is that the baby boomers and the silent generation who built the associations and the structures that we use today they built it to their own tastes. The products, the services, the governance frameworks, the events, the decision-making structures, everything is to the taste of the baby boomers and the silent generations and, older generation X like myself. And that's great if you're from that cohort. But if you think about the younger generation, they grew up with Spotify, LinkedIn, Uber, dial up when you need it, dial out when you don't. The way they make decisions, if you look at, we're doing some work with teenagers at the moment, looking at how they make decisions, and that collective way that they work doesn't fit with traditional association models. So when we're looking at what the future of association membership is, we can't rely on how we've done it before, because we're not even going to get what we always got if we follow those models. We've actually got to open ourselves up to some larger models that we move forward without necessarily throwing the baby out with the bathwater. Now, a few things that I do want to make clear is there is a difference between your membership model, your membership categories, and your components. So a membership model is this thing here. It's all of the different things that come together to create your entire business foundations that underpin how your membership operates. And I'm going to go through these because a lot of the questions that you had deal with these. Your membership categories are just the, are you student, retired, 10 to 20 trucks? Those are membership categories. Now, sometimes all an association needs to get fairly impactful change is a little shuffle of the categories. Sometimes there's fundamental issues. Now, one of the things that make it challenging is what we call components. Now, component relations management actually is a field of study with quite a lot of evidence and research behind it. Components are all of the subgroups of an association, your divisions, your branches, your special interest groups, your communities of practice, your volunteering pathways, your ad hoc volunteering opportunities, as well as your more formal. Does that make sense? So when we're looking at your membership model and we're doing a review, we actually need to see it as part of all of that. You can't just look at the processes without considering the people, and the people come alive through your components. We were talking before about the Psychological Society, so many different components that are sitting in there, and they have to come on the journey. And this is one of the things where we see membership model reviews actually fall over, is when the members aren't brought on the journey and they feel it's foisted upon them. Now, the traditional models that we're all used to, members pay an annual fee, you pay once a year. If you're a member, you get stuff. If you're a non-member, you don't. It's very resource heavy, limited scalability. And you can see in here, it was made for a time where we didn't have the technology available to let us scale up in the way that we can now. Now, one of the biggest problems that you have, and I know a few of you for different reasons in this room will be quite aware of this issue, is, my kids hate me saying this, but back in my day, when I was in associations, each association didn't have any competitors. It was very rare. Yes, the three accountancy bodies were quite amusing to watch the CBA versus the CA wars in the late 90s, early 2000s. But for the most part, and associations had a gentleman's agreement to leave each other alone, stick to their patch. But as technology has evolved, it is now very easy for anybody to start a new association. And that means that the biggest competitor for the Royal Australian College of General Practitioners, would anyone like to have a guess at who it is?
Their member?
No. It's a Facebook group called Doctors Down Under. Because if you want to join an association for collegiality, why pay you thousands of dollars a year to be a member when you can get it for free from a Facebook group? And this is one of the things, we're seeing a rise of informal competitors. We're seeing a rise of formal competitors where corporates come in and cherry pick the profit-making activities like events from an association. We're also seeing lots of new associations being created, often breakaways from the core association who might have an ideological difference of opinion. And now, more so than ever, it is really, really easy to do that. And we're seeing this happen more and more. So associations who want to survive into the future, or thrive more accurately into the future, are shifting their membership models to really leverage and engage with the broader community. But this is where it comes down to the membership model. Before you even have this conversation, you need to understand, why do you even want members? Membership is a time-consuming, resource-heavy tool. I've spent 30 years of my life devoted to the research of it, and even I can appreciate it is challenging to execute well. So when we go into these processes, we need to keep in mind that the end is not to have a thriving membership program. A thriving membership program is an enabler of whatever our purpose is. Does that make sense? And so while there's lots of people who could be a member, that's very different from who should be a member. So when we're looking at and in fact, before I go any further, any questions so far or comments? Has anyone seen this kind of thing? And have they seen the rise of competitors and things like that happening?
Yes. So we've both of the things you said. So informal groups, or groups that are just focused on the networking component or get-togethers, etc. And also the commercial operations dipping into like the event space and training.
It's huge. I mean, people are really targeting associations now, and members aren't as forgiving as they used to be. It used to be they go, oh, you're an association, we don't expect you to be quite as like snappy and snazzy as the corporates, but they're not forgiving anymore, particularly not the younger generation.
We've also found, so we had a very rocky decade where things weren't going well, and we're sort of on the rebound. And during that time, there's a lot of people popped up in the space because we weren't servicing what needed to be serviced in the sector. So we've got people that popped up to service the gaps that we had, and now we're basically having to try and claw back that attention.
It is, and it's hard to get it, and it's really interesting. gosh, there's so much. I'm involved in so many different research projects at the moment. My mind spins because I haven't had a chance to put hardly any of it out into the public domain. But things like there's research showing that if you engage with a student or a younger member, even if they don't join, younger members tend to gravitate towards their professional association about the age of 30 years old. And that figure has stayed steady for the entire time I've been working in the sector. But those people who you connected with positively in their formative career years are much more likely to join you over a competitor over that time. So when you talk about getting the share of attention, the time span that that's going to impact is quite significant. We've also done into a couple of membership bases that we've done research. We found that once a member leaves the organization, how recoverable that member is depends on their duration to the career. The older the member gets, the less likely that membership is to be recoverable. Younger people who are still more at the start of their careers are much more able to be engaged. But perhaps the most interesting thing that we found, and actually this is just from some research we've completed last month, where we asked a lot of long-term members, what is it that they valued most about their membership? And without exception, for all of the focus groups that we ran, the answer, while worded differently, was exactly the same. A sense of belonging, feeling part of a professional community, collegiality, connectivity. It was all about the community, and that actually highlights one of the key unique selling propositions you have in a membership program for an association is that sense of connectedness. There'll always be competitors for your products, your services, your advocacy, your events, everything you do. But if you can be the source of community, it makes you pretty well unassailable competitively. And so it comes back to what I said before. It's about the people and actually having ways to connect them. And that's why with a membership program, it's not a numbers game. It's not about how many members we can get, because sometimes that's not what you want to do. It's about who should be a member, getting the right people in the room. And I'm going to give you a quick example of that. Does anyone here know the Elevating Work Platforms Association? No, they're a little bit obscure. So they're the industry body for that, the machinery that goes up and down, like your cherry pickers and things like that. Now that machinery, unsurprisingly, is extremely dangerous. So their association is about safe operation and safety with that machinery. So their members are the manufacturers and the companies who use that machinery. Now they come together collectively, and their cause is safety outcomes. Now, at that point, they could say, oh, do you know what? We should have everybody who operates that machinery as a member. But they said, well, actually, no, they could be a member, but should they? Because if our goal is a safe operation, what we actually want is for all of those operators to be licensed for the safe use of that equipment. But that's a transactional thing. They don't want to be part of our governance. They don't want to be volunteering. It's a transactional. So they actually said, no, our core membership are the manufacturers and companies who are advancing this. Those people are customers. They're clients. They will transactionally purchase the license. So EWP actually runs the ticket to operate that machinery. But that is a transactional relationship that we have. And we won't have those as members. So you understand that, you know, they made that strategic choice, which has served them well, because they don't want every, you know, machine operator who's dropped into the industry for 5 years to be wanting to sit on their board. Does that make sense? So we've got to think about membership as a tool. And what I'm going to jump into now is I'm going to go through each of these elements, and I'll address where the things have come up that we've talked about. So first we talked about the foundation. So this first column here is the things that you need to know before you can even start on any kind of membership model review or setting up membership from scratch. So when I say purpose, I'm not talking about whatever committee agreed sentence or 6 or 20 that has appeared in your constitution. I'm actually interested in the intent. What is the positive difference that your organization makes in the world? Why do you exist? And Elise, do you mind if I pick on AMA for a second? In just
Yeah, that's
well intentioned. So the New Zealand version of the AMA actually went out of business a few years ago. And I actually, for many, many years, I believe the AMA has missed its opportunity, because when I first engaged with the AMA back in the early 90s, you had almost 100% membership of penetration into the market. It was incredible and one of the most powerful organizations out there. But if you looked at who was engaging, the medical market is so crowded. There are so many colleges, there's so many professional associations. Like, the medical sector is drowning in associations. But the AMA was a bit unique, because in a world where it was all about individual-based memberships, even though AMA did use an individual-based membership more and more, it actually was the one that had more of a mandate to be an industry body for the sector.
Mm.
And it never really stepped up and owned that space. And I think your federated structure has made life really difficult for you. But this is an example of the nuance of purpose. There are so many associations out there. Where's your uniqueness in your purpose? Are you there to represent the profession? Are you there to represent the sector? Are you there to represent a cause? The Australian Society for Ultrasound and Medicine versus the Australian Sonographers Association. You might say that those two organisations are the same, but they're not. The Australian Sonographers Association is a professional body for sonographers. The Australian Society for Ultrasound and Medicine is a cause-based organisation about the responsible use of ultrasound across disciplines, from sonographers through to sports physiotherapists, through to through nurses. Does that make sense? So having that clarity about what is the difference that you make and what are you? And so when we talk about an identity is, are you a professional association, an industry association, a cause-based association? And something else that's really relevant for a few people in this room, are you what we call a primary or a secondary association? Because these things will impact your model. So what is a primary and secondary association? Okay, so a primary association is the organization that person either must be a member of, or business must be a member of, or will tend to be a member of in the first instance. So if I wanted to be a surgeon, I'm going to go through the College of Surgeons, because that's where I'm going to be able to fellow and be able to practice. But I might then join the AMA. I might then join the Ultrasound and Medicine. I might join a lot of other associations, because it enables me to pursue an interest or get a value that I'm not getting from the college. The college is my primary association. These other associations are secondaries. Now, there is a very different approach to membership for someone who is predominantly a primary association than for somebody who's predominantly secondary. Because as a primary association, you know you're the default body. You can actually get away with a lot, but you've got to provide a more broader base of value to a more specific group of people. So if I'm the College of Surgeons, I'm focusing in on surgeons, and I'm deepening and broadening my value to them as much as I can. But if I'm a secondary association, I don't need to do that. I need to figure out what is my unique value that I deliver, and I need to drill down into that specific uniqueness. Something that differentiates it, that makes me the must-have association, even if you're a member of 6 other associations. And that's one of the challenges of executing that, is about figuring out what is it that we do. Because associations, and I'm going to flick back and forth between slides here, but I have a lot of slides in here. I'm going to talk to it because I can't find it. Okay, so there are already 5 different types of activities or functions that any association can do. You are either going to be about advocacy to the government or the public on something. This is why people should use our professionals, or this is why our sector's so good, or changing policy. The second one is mobilization, when you can go out and you mobilize your members or your stakeholders to take action on your behalf. So think, GetUp is an example of that. The third one is what we call service provision. That's when you sit here and you give your members something, whether it's regular updates, publications, magazines, you run events and things like that. You keep them up to date. It might be tools, templates, resources. It's stuff that you do for your members. The fourth one is about pathways, generally pathways into excellence. So from sporting, so it's training. So you come in as an amateur and then you come up to professional. It's like colleges, you come in and then you go through your traineeship up to excellence. So it's about training pathways. The last one is about community and connectivity. And its purest form, think something like LinkedIn, where your association is a platform that connects not just members, but potentially the broader sector together. Now, the challenge when you've got these 5 different functional areas that you can do is that the drivers and the resource load on the association changes quite dramatically. So for example, imagine advocacy. If I advocate to government, I've got to figure out for my members what I need to do and get the evidence, go to government, deal with government, then I'm going to go back and communicate it to my members. So there's almost like this constant figure 8 going on of communication. That can be quite difficult to execute because one of the most common challenges with associations who are predominantly about advocacy is our members don't get it. They don't understand the work we do on their behalf. And that's purely because you're not communicating it effectively enough. But contrast that with service provision, where your goal is to get members to uptake your services, open your emails, read your magazines, whatever it is that you have. The communication challenge is different. It's about how do I inspire uptake and reuptake and engagement with our products and services. How you communicate, how you engage with members is different. But then contrast that with the last one, community. If you are a platform that's uniting people together, you want to get out of the way. Your communication is not about telling people stuff. It's about facilitating connectivity. Each of those different functions has quite a different resource structure. So when you are going into figuring out what is our identity and what are we doing, you've got to be really clear about what is the functions that are most important for us to execute well. Make sense so far? And I'm imagining that most of you are thinking the same thing. Most associations do most of those functions. And so it's really hard to do everything well at once. So it's figuring which ones do we prioritize? Because I've got a client I'm working with at the moment who's a very large association who's doing all 5 of those things, and it's killing their staff, their volunteers, and they actually need to step back and rethink it. For example, one of the things that they're doing is they said, well, actually 4 skills pathways is really important to us, making sure that our professionals are kept educated. So as a result, for decades, they are creating and marketing all of their own training. Now, they're now in an environment where competitors are delivering better quality training, cheaper or free than they're actually able to deliver. And they are a competitor in a very, very, very crowded marketplace. And when you strip it back and you talk to their members, what's important to their members is their advocacy and their community. And even the members see this as crowded and all going to the competitor stuff anyway. So strategically, do they lean in and they keep investing resources in training, or do they actually take a step back and say, wait a sec, if our members are already able to access this, do we have a role delivering training anymore? Potentially, could we shift that role and become accreditors of training and connectivity opportunities and become the hub for all quality training into our profession? So instead of becoming a competitor to all these other players, we're actually now a valued partner that they will engage with because we will help market their courses and give them the credibility that they need and to distinguish themselves from courses that maybe aren't so great. And so these are the strategic decisions you've got to make before you're actually even going into your membership model. And it can't be seen in isolation. So that's kind of where we're sitting. So any questions on that foundations? Because I know I'm going through at a reasonably big clip and I am happy to send you guys heaps of materials from this. Does anyone feel that they're quite good in terms of their functions that they're delivering and the purpose, and you've got absolute clarity about that? Or does anyone feel that you maybe need to do a bit of work on that?
Hey Belinda, it's Kirsten Green.
Yeah.
I'd just like to seize the moment since I came late. Our foundation, our association, Melbourne PC User Group, got into tech back in the 80s, and now we're like struggling with our purpose statement being too wide. But we have had some, well, I don't know, recently, because we have a great hall for meeting in, various community groups have been cottoning onto using our hall, and one of them was the Indian diaspora that kind of ran a session for their kids on kind of, it was a kind of a coming of age type thing, sort of hoping to get them into youth parliament. And I don't know, it's just such an intergenerational example. And so I'm hoping, like, perhaps our source of community is that we connect geeks and makers with geeks and makers, but it's the whole, we have the opportunity, and that this window will close to connect older retired engineer types to young people that just want to hang around in workshops and learn stuff. Anyway, that's my blurb. Yeah.
You guys have an interesting challenge there, because you were formed at a time where computers and PCs were new, and people were on that upskill trying to figure out, how do I use them and what do I do? And that connecting with each other was really helpful.
Yeah.
Now we're in a stage where they're so familiar. There is, like, you know, what have I got in the house? A chair, table, PC, and people don't have that need. But there is still need out there. But
I'm
that's
really
quickly, yeah.
Yeah, my word, I'm thinking of the ban on social media and how young people are going to react to that. And so what are they're going to actually have to meet in person to work around it, are they? Can we help with that?
No. Actually, funny enough, as soon as we saw that coming through, because we're working with teens to understand, because that's how they collaborate and connect and form their own associations. And they laughed because they're like, oh, they never heard of a VPN. The kids, and they are saying that the government's putting the onus on the IT companies, on the social media companies, to check ages. Now, frankly, one of the things that deeply concerns me about that is that means that it's not just the kids who have to provide their passport to those social media companies. Every single adult does, if they go down that pathway.
Oh, wow. You can just see the thing that they thought would help actually becomes the petrol on the fire.
Well, this is the concern, but for the children, for the kids who are affected, and the kids are like wildfire. I mean, yes, my son, he hacks for fun, but nothing naughty. But you see how he and his friends all collaborate. As soon as one of them figures out a workaround, it goes like wildfire through. Children connect differently than adults do. They connect for purpose, and the membership models of the future are going to look very, very different. And that is why associations, we've got to be aware and talk to our younger members. One of the really interesting things that can inform this process is I ran a workshop for a client of mine at the end of last year, and it was called Why Your Younger Members Hate You. And what we did, and it was done in good humor, we got the entire board, the entire staff into a room, and we invited a couple of their younger members, final year students, recent grads, to actually come in and explain what they thought was wrong with the association. And these guys were so excited to be able to share everything they thought was wrong. They actually, they brought PowerPoint presentations. And it was done in very good humor. But the things they were saying were things like, stop sending me emails. I never read them. They're boring and I delete them without opening them. If you want to tell me something, send me a TikTok. And at one point, the board, very nice board member, asked so innocently, but isn't that for your personal life? And this young man, he's looked at him and gone, no, it's for my life. If you want me, if it's that important, put it on TikTok. I don't need to be reading emails. I don't even go to my uni lectures because they're an hour long. I watch the recording on 2 times speed, because who's got an hour to waste listening to someone talk? And this is where we need to be really aware as associations that younger people are fundamentally different in the way that they associate and the way that they engage. Now, the research on this is pretty clear. Younger people show a greater predisposition to connect collectively for collective action than even the baby boomers who built the associations that we enjoy. But how they engage in the frameworks through which they do are fundamentally different. So all of the things that I'm talking about today and any of the solutions that you're coming up with are part of an evolution. They're not a solution. They're the next step in your evolution. I've got associations at the moment that are talking about getting rid of financial membership entirely. And they can see that time coming. But then anything they do between now and then, they see that as an evolution that's happening as they reposition themselves. And so, and I realize we are going through time. I'm going to actually, so what do people think about that? Is that can you see that happening in your own organizations, that evolution? Could I get a show of hands? Who here is having challenges engaging younger members? Yeah, most people are going to be. So I'm actually going to, I will go down some of these slides and show you, and I will send you the slide set. So we talked before, and I'm looking at your list of, because we're going through the list of everything you've given me. When we're talking about simplifying membership models, let's actually have a look at that. How do we come up with something that's much simpler than we had before? So let's address that question. That's in who do we serve? Now, when you actually sit down and go, right, everyone could be a member, but who should be a member, you've got to figure out who and organize your stakeholders. Serve is the group or the cause that you exist for. So in the absence of, if everyone is in the room and there is a huge disagreement of an opinion, whose opinion matters most? So sometimes it's obvious. If I'm with the Australian Stenographers Association, it's going to be the stenography profession. It's going to be the professionals who are working in there that are going to sit in the core of who we serve. And you might say we serve everyone from the students through to retired. That's who we serve. But what about the Society for Ultrasound and Medicine? They serve the cause of the proper use of ultrasound. So in this instance, it's an example of where who you serve is a cause, and that cause is what's paramount. So how do you figure out who should be a member? Well, who you serve, who you engage with. So who do you collaborate with in order to advance your mission? In the case of the Australian Society for Ultrasound and Medicine, that's going to be doctors, allied health professionals, other people. Those people generally should be a member because they're helping to advance the cause, and you're mobilizing them, engaging them in ways that's going to advance the cause. And it's not uncommon for people to have those who fall into the engage as members. Customers, you remember with the Elevating Work platforms, people who have a transactional rather than emotional relationship with you, these people generally should not be a member. They are people who can buy from you, and that is okay. Campaign is, so for example, you're repositioning your sector to the public because you're trying to attract more people in for your workforce. Those people are campaign recipients, once again, not members. The last one, vendors, suppliers of products and services to your members. In most instances, these people should be regarded as a separate type of stakeholder. I'm working with a couple of associations at the moment where the vendors actually hold the majority sway on the board and the majority sway in terms of membership votes. And it's really not a good situation because the fox is in the hen house, so to speak. And it's not saying that some of these people aren't lovely people, but we've actually statistically shown more times than I even care to count that the opinions of those you serve versus the opinions of your vendor groups and other stakeholders are quite different. In fact, there's a survey that when we do member surveys, in fact, I might have even gone in here. Did I put it in? All right. So when we undertake surveys of membership bases, there's a question that we always ask. And there's different ones down the side, but the question is, how important is it to you that the association undertakes this particular list of benefits? Now, sometimes it's a list of benefits, sometimes we do a high level and it's strategic positions, but essentially what we're trying to ascertain is how important by market segment. So we segment the data to say, well, in this instance, CEOs, small businesses, large businesses, members, non-members. We follow that up with a second question, the same set of answer options. We say, how effective is our association at delivering the following? And here's where it starts to get interesting. If you look at this anonymized data set here, you can see the all list, the government advocacy is at the top of the list at the 70% effectiveness. But when you start to look through this list, you can see the variances. Small business actually prioritize and see as important a lot of things that are about getting them getting direct assistance that you don't see in the larger businesses. You can see here that members judge the effectiveness of the association more highly than non-members. You can see here the monthly magazine. There's people are saying, look, you're doing it great, but it's really not that important to us anymore. So when you're thinking about streamlining your resources, these kind of tools can help you to, one, understand what can you stop doing. It's okay to stop doing some things, but also if you're packaging up membership to certain groups, how can we package this? Because going back with trucking, for example, Lisa, you're saying small businesses, we can provide a value proposition for a certain number of trucks that gives them more practical support. Larger businesses, we know that they don't just want to support our advocacy position, they actually want to be part of the journey. They actually want to influence what that position is more. Does that make sense? Would people use this kind of survey tool in their organizations? I really, really, really recommend this. This is super handy when you're doing strategic planning. At the moment, I've got a survey in the market at the moment, which is we've put, the association came up with 18 different strategic priorities, and we need to narrow it down to 3. And we've actually just asked all the members. It's been great. Louise, you said you've done something similar. Yeah, I love this way of visualizing. The way that we got this is we add together the people who say it's important and very important, or effective and very effective, to create a percentage out of 100. And it's super, super easy then for people to understand. But we usually slice and dice it over a number of different pages by age, by every single different thing that we can, basically. All right. So I'm going through, yes, simpler. Sorry, I'm going on to the simplification. Yeah, so it's a Likert scale. So it's a 5-point scale that we've got. And yeah, it works really well. Now I'm going back to the questions here. So how can we simplify it? Step 1 is to go through and segment your stakeholders into serve, engage customers, so you understand who should be a member. Once you've figured out who should be a member, I recommend doing a stakeholder analysis template. Now, this is super, super helpful. So you want to break it down into all of your different markets. Now, this is just examples, but figure out where are the natural groupings. If you were to get all of those people who should be a member into a room and you could ask them to get into different groups, what are the groups that have a commonality of need, a commonality of response to the same marketing stimulus? So that could be, and I'm going to pick on you, Lisa, sorry, the number of trucks. Like these guys are small businesses because they've got up to this amount of trucks. These are medium, these are larger. And once you've actually figured out what those market segments are, then get a description for them. What is the market size? How many members do you currently have in that group? What's your market penetration? What's your current retention rate? What are they currently paying? You want to get a deep understanding of each of these segments so you can assess, are these a group that really should be a member? Does this make sense? Has anyone gone through this process? Often, and I'd say for 95% of associations, your segments, potentially by a slightly different label, will become your membership categories if you want to have intuitive membership categorization. All right. So when you're looking at simplification, there is a difference too between your membership categories and your pricing. Now, a couple of people there, when you're talking about pricing, you said you got stacks and stacks and stacks of options, like 54 options, I think you said you had, Rachel. Are they pricing options or are they categorization options? Have we got Rachel? I know Rachel had someone with her. No. Who here has a lot of membership categories? Anyone else in here who's got that?
Yeah, we
So
do. We have a stack.
So are they
AMA.
categories or pricing?
They're called categories and they're all different prices.
So you might have
I don't know.
full-time,
Is that the
part-time,
same thing or not? That's also something I don't think we haven't had a deep dive into.
Okay.
Hmm.
So sometimes categories can become overly complex because people mix up market segments with pricing. So for example, you might say we're profession, and then you might have part-time, full-time, career break, overseas, and you might have 12 different pricing options for that one category. So is that what you have, or is it more?
Yeah, we do. So we would have, for example, doctor in training, and there's a different price for first year, second year, third year, fourth year, fifth year. So that would be one segment, I guess, would be doctor in training, but broken up into 6 different pricing models depending on what year they're in.
Yeah. So, and that's one of the things when you're looking at simplification, top level categories here, you don't want any more than 5.
Okay.
When you're looking at membership categories, if you've got sort of more than 5 going in, that's where it becomes problematic. Oh, okay. Can I ask here, can I just get a show of hands, who has predominantly individual members? Who's got predominantly organizational members? So less. Okay. So individual membership is actually theoretically easier because the person making the buying decision is often the person who's using the membership. So it's a relatively simple, almost transactional relationship in terms of marketing membership. However, something really odd is happening with the membership models of individual-based organizations in the last 7 years. What we're seeing is more and more individual organizations are moving into corporate memberships, organizational or group memberships. Because one of the things that we've noticed is that retention rates on organizational memberships globally tend to be higher than for individual memberships. And that's because, first of all, I mean, I've got one client who's got a 5% death rate on their individual memberships because people die and their membership is older. But the other thing is, in an organizational membership as well, not only are they stickier because organizations tend to then put it into the budget and it sticks around, but it is more challenging to do, but it does give you deeper penetration. So if you have an organizational membership, for those of you who have organizational memberships here, how big are the organizations who are members? Can anyone just give me some numbers?
1,100.
1,100 staff?
Oh, no, 1 staff.
Oh, 1 staff.
Sorry.
Yeah, that's right. For organizational memberships, does anyone have organizations with more than 10 staff as members? So one of the problems that you have is penetration. Traditionally, when we didn't have the tech to support it, and I'm going to go on to a break in 4 minutes for those of you who need to go to the bathroom. For those of you who have organizational memberships, it's about getting a depth of penetration. So traditionally, when we didn't have a lot of great tech, you'd have one point of contact, and that point of contact would be responsible for engaging throughout the organization. That is a really bad situation to be in because if that person leaves, it's as if they were never a member. The single biggest predictor of the success of corporate memberships is the depth of penetration that you have into each organizational member and your ability to customize the relationship to the individuals, whether they be leaders, managers, or doers. So strategic, operational, tactical. Now that applies no matter how many staff, like with Louise, you've got, I would imagine a number of your members have their own consultancies or practices, right?
Yep.
So we've done a lot around practice memberships in medical and also with consultancies, because we've noticed in practice memberships, you've got the people who are operating. So they do the invoicing, the administration, the background client management. You've got the consultants out the coalface. You've got all different people in that practice, administration, new staff, the people who own it. The needs of the individuals there are quite different. And so what we're seeing are people now creating these practice memberships, very similar in medical as well, where they can tailor membership benefits to different individuals and different engagement with different individuals to solve problems, so that if one person leaves, they've actually still got their connectivity within that organization. Now, the reason I talk about this here is when you're doing your stakeholder analysis, this analysis here is a really basic one. But if I was dealing with organizational memberships in here, I would also identify who are the people in that organization, what are the levels that I need to be engaging with, and what kind of value are each of those groups going to be seeking. All right. I'm actually going to go through purpose, vision. Okay. So what I'm going to do is the next thing I want to talk about is actually engagement. But before I do that, I've appreciated that we've talked now for almost an hour and a half, and you guys probably need the bathroom. So should we take a few minutes break and come back at 40 minutes past the hour? So it's 10:40 here in Queensland. Imagine it's 11:40 for those of you in the New South Wales, Victoria, etc. So back in 15 minutes, if everybody would like to. Thank you. Let's start with, if everyone could just pop into the chat, what CRM are you using and do you like it? Well, a few IMSs. Wow. So for those of you on IMIS, you can just talk if you want to. What's your thoughts? Do you like the system?
I don't think I don't think we're using it to its full potential. I'm quite new at AMA, but I think, and it's a system I'm still learning how to use, but I think there's a lot more integrations we can build into it, but we haven't. I think Federal are looking into something like that, a digital transformation, which will help. But in the meantime, I think there's a lot of functionality that we're missing out on.
Okay. IMIS is a huge system. It's one of the legacy ones. It was around. It's the first system I started using in the early 90s. What about for those of you on Dynamics? Alison, you said you just moved there?
Yeah, so we've just gone across. To be honest, I'm not in it much. I haven't been in the organization that long to submerge myself in it. We don't have a lot of data we've got from our former, which was Pivotal. It seems to have some teething problems. We've got a whole digital transformation project going on at the same time. So yeah, sorry, I can't really comment too much on Dynamics.
No, that's all right. What
Better
about
than what we had.
Often that's a really low bar.
Yeah.
There's a couple of you using MEMS. What do you think about that?
It's okay for what you pay for it, was my comment, because there's plenty of things where it does the job just fine, but it has limitations which are just stopping us being able to progress to where we want to. So the communication module just doesn't cut it for us, and sort of more intelligent reporting and automation and things that we're after, it just doesn't do.
And is there anybody here who loves their CRM? Silence.
I mean, I don't know if love is like the right word, but definitely it's, so we just did like the first stage of our digital transformation July last year, and like it's such a significant improvement. So I really do like it. And I think, yeah, there's a lot of, and that's IMIS. And we're still, like Nancy and I are still going through things pretty much on a weekly basis on tweaking and just sort of improving the processes because we can. I think we didn't have that capacity before. So, like there's a lot of work to do in that space. And yeah, so I find it really good in that sense.
Okay. Because technology is shaping up. Like, at any one point in time, I've usually got about 6 strategic planning processes underway. I think at the beginning of the year, there was 12 at once, which was a bit overcommitted. And the consistent issue with most association strategies at the moment. So, and you'd be familiar, a strategic plan's got 2 parts. It's got your strategic priorities, which is what's the impact you're going to make on the lives of your members. Oh, Rachel, for you, that's awful. And then the second part of a strategic plan is your operational priorities, i.e. the enablers that no one gives a crap about unless they go horribly wrong, like your communications, your governance, your branding, your positioning, your technology. And so in order to be able to affect impact on your members, the operational side of things has to be positioned effectively, and technology is the common issue across the board for associations. And first of all, can I say it's not your fault, because it's not like there's some mythical, incredible CRM that you just haven't discovered yet. Sadly, most of them are crap, because for the very valid reason that technology is shifting really quickly. We've got a lot of legacy systems, and IMIS being one of the ones that have been around for ages, that are trying to adapt to a really rapidly changing environment. And then you've got all these new systems coming out that are also trying to better understand associations to be able to deliver outcomes. And it's moving so fast that even the technology providers themselves are having trouble keeping up. For example, putting AI into systems. So one of the things that you got on the screen here is when I'm looking at an association and we're looking at membership models, we actually try and figure where they're at on the engagement scale, and you'll see technology is absolutely intimately in there. So a traditional, so there's 3 different stages, types, and one's not better than the other. They're just different. There's traditional, which is Masons. It's your traditional developing, it's your stereotypical what you think Masons is. Contemporary is where you're delivering a lot of the same things that a traditional association did, but in a really contemporary technology-driven way. And digital is when you're delivering like you're essentially the Netflix, that level of delivery. It's seamless, it's online, everything's automated, and it's very much scalable. Now, within each of those 3, associations sit at different levels. So if an association comes to me who's essentially a Masons saying they want to deliver at a Netflix level, that's a big jump for any organization to make, and which makes it really high risk. So when we're looking at organizations to self-assess, it's a realistic assessment to say, where are we at now and where do we want to get to? Most associations that we deal with are advanced traditional or developing contemporary, wanting to get to advanced contemporary as a general rule. But the challenge is the technology companies being able to keep up with this, and also the association being able to undertake digital transformation. So digital transformation isn't a project anymore. It's an ongoing process that I've got to break the news to you, is never going to change. It's never going to end. It's an evolutionary process, because what's right for you this year is not going to be right for you in 5 years' time, possibly even 3 years' time, because it's shifting so quickly. And also it looks different. One of the problems that we found is a lot of the IT people don't understand the AI environment, and vice versa. So for example, we've talked earlier when you guys were all sharing your challenges about automation. And sadly, automation is almost old news, because it's now expected that you'll have automation that drives your renewal, your member onboarding, your volunteer engagement. So much of that can be automated. But now you've got AI, which can take it one step further. So for example, there are associations right now, when it comes to engaging with their members, when the CEO's created a digital avatar, and when she pressed send on a Friday for that, her CEO update to go out, it goes out in the language that the member has nominated as their primary language. So it's taking automation and personalization to a degree that we've never really had before. So my question to you is, how many of you are in that stage? Are you actively integrating AI? Are you say at that cutting edge of engagement?
We're using AI ad hoc behind the scenes, but not for anything member facing at the moment. So content creation, synthesizing information, coming up with frameworks, etc. But we haven't used anything that's member facing.
Yeah, we're exactly the same as Louise. We do a lot of it in the background, transcribing phone calls and information in that, but nothing directly to our members.
Are you using AI for like segmentation and understanding your market segments better yet?
Only just started.
Let me show you something, because membership model work is challenging. And if you treat ChatGPT as an assistant, literally an assistant, you know your market. But I'm going to show you just a shortcut for those of you who aren't using this already, because I find it really helpful. Now, I was going to use Brendan, but he's not here. Who would like to be my guinea pig? All right, Louise. So now your email is at CPRA now, isn't it?
Yeah, .org.au.
So I've gone to ChatGPT and I said, tell me about this organization. So it tells me through, gives me the information. I can say, okay, they're currently wanting to update their membership categories to something more contemporary. Answering as a membership models expert, what would you advise their categories should be? Now, I found ChatGPT to be a bit hit and miss. It's getting better, but it does give things that will spark your thinking. So career stage categories, industry segment categories, level of engagement, community focused. So it's got here. And so it gives you things to start the ideas going. So I'd use it for that, but also you can get in, you can say, create an Excel, a downloadable Excel table that provides an overview of the key market segments, an approximate market size for each, and the top 3 benefits they would seek from membership. Now, this is where it helps you to get your drafting. It's not going to give you the final answer. And here, and I'll pop the, so it's just asked, I'll pop that prompt into the chat, but I would, instead of, and you can see here what it looks like, but this is what the.
So I've done something a little bit similar to this, Belinda, where I've actually, using a closed system, I've actually used our member survey data as well.
Yes.
And thrown that into it in terms of being able to inform what the members want and sort of put our other documents and contextual information in there as well to try and help us start mapping things out. I found it's really, really good for putting in multiple documents and getting it to draw from all of them.
I'm so pleased you're doing that. That's fantastic, because you can, if that's the case, I'm guessing you're using this Canvas?
Yeah, I also use a couple of other AIs as well. So I use Claude and
I like Claude. Claude's really good for programming. I create lots of apps because you can natural language program in Claude.
For debugging HTML as well.
Yes, it's awesome. For those of you who aren't active users of ChatGPT, Canvas is a co-creation platform. So if you open something in Canvas, you can go through and you can ask it questions. So you can highlight and you can say, like you might add in another table here. So you might say, right, add in another table that, in fact, this is really big. Simplify this into the top 5 market segments that would be my member categories. So with Canvas, you can go back and it can actually co-create a document. And it's really helpful. So you can see here it's come through. Then you might say, add another column. I swear I can spell. That gives the eligibility for each category. So I recommend, if you want someone to talk to and you don't have somebody and you want to save your resources, see, you can see here, it gives different ideas. Now, I think I'd probably come up with slightly different membership categories here, but that's the point. You can go, I hate these categories, try something new. Talk to it like a human being when you're going through with this. But anyway, that's just a bit of a segue, because the AI tools really do help you to go through this process. But when you're looking at technology selection, so much technology investment has been wasted and thrown out in the last few years. Figure out your business rules, your membership processes, your governance, and your components frameworks. What is going to sit in there first, and then go through your technology selection. So many associations are getting into it, realizing that they need to change their membership categories. And when you go back to retrospectively fit that in, it just doesn't work. And one of the key things that you should be looking to build in to any membership system when you're doing a membership model is this. This here is the 7 steps. Can you see that? Can you see it on there? So it's essentially 7 areas to recruiting and retaining members effectively. One is, where do you generate your membership leads from? So do you get it from picking up details of events? Is there a collection on your website? Do you get business cards? Do you go to student events? So where do you get the leads? How do you generate them? Then how do you capture them into your database, and how do you classify them for future follow-up? Then once you've got somebody in your database, how do you build a relationship with them as a prospective member? Then how do you actually take them from a prospective member into a member? What's your sales process look like? What automation have you got built around that? Once someone's made that decision to join, what's your new member integration or onboarding process? What's your automation around that? How do you help them find the right tribes, special interest groups, components? How do you present them with ad hoc volunteering? How do you help them have that epiphany that they've gone from that transactional decision to belong to that emotional decision that transactional decision to join to the emotional decision to belong? And in member relationship management, how are you actively seeking to engage members? And this is where your components are really important. Our research has consistently shown that members who are active in special interest groups, divisions, branches, etc., are stickier over a longer period of time. So how do you get them involved? And not every member is going to want to get a permanent volunteering opportunity either. Sometimes they might respond to a survey and think that that means that they're involved and engaged, because it's also by their perspective. Renewal process, like you were talking before about the issues with having to remove their provider numbers. There is so much data on renewal processes now and how to segment them and how to optimize them to maximize the renewals. There's no excuse for poor performing renewals. Marketing Journal is a good place to start for that data, but I'm happy if anyone wants to follow me up afterwards and talk to me. I've got a few documentations that I can send through that show that a renewal process, the more points of contact you've got and the longer it runs, the higher your retention rate will be. But of course, reactivation, automation around reactivation, that we want you back campaigns to past members are immensely successful, because you don't need to tell them who you are or give them the history. You just need to tell them what's changed and give them some kind of reason for wanting to join. And our research has been pretty consistent now for many, many years, in that 50% of the reasons that people don't renew, have got nothing whatsoever to do with you, which means that they're actually really valid prospects for membership. So when you are building your tech systems and your engagement systems, this model is a really good place to start to think, how can we automate this model so that each of these 7 items works well, but the linkages between each of those also flow? Does that make sense? Oh, just looking at the chat. Yeah, Alison, you just had a meeting. Do you know, who was it? The primary healthcare nurses, when Murphy Woods was there. She did one of the things I loved about the way that they did their renewals is they not only had a really great renewal marketing plan, they treated it like a marketing campaign, but their post-renewal reporting, what were our learnings, how did it perform, what did we do, what would we do next year, what wouldn't we do next year, that was done right after the renewal process, was so great, because anyone could pick that up and know immediately what to do. And I'll see if I can actually send the APNA renewal report. It's probably a little bit longer than I would normally do, but I'll actually send that to you guys if you want, because it's a great example of how you can really, even when the renewals don't go as well as you're expecting. So the renewal report I've got, it didn't go fantastic for a number of reasons, but they actually did the analysis. They didn't just rush on to the next thing as a lot of associations do. Any questions, comments, requests for data?
I'm absolutely requesting data. We did the kickoff meeting that we did yesterday, had representatives of all areas of the organisation to get their input about how we should be servicing our members. But yeah, we have got that, what went wrong last year. And technology was one of our issues last year. We changed platforms in the middle of renewals.
Oh, that's terrifying.
Yep.
The Marketing General benchmarks have a whole section on what renewal processes are working most effectively for individual versus organizational memberships. I recommend checking that out. Just a quick aside from a personal perspective, one of the things that I love is a double hit initial renewal, where the first renewal goes out as in 2 formats. So whether that's a hard copy and an email, or an email and a text, but there's 2 hits. And we found that that actually works to skew the renewals forward so that you can isolate those people who are more at risk and follow them up earlier before the renewal date. I'll see if I can find one of my old renewal campaigns. If I can find one and anonymize it, I'll send it across as well. Any other questions? All right. In that case, we're going to jump into components. Now, components are fundamental to your membership categories and membership models. So your community isn't homogenous. It's made up of lots of different tribes. Now, generally speaking, there are 4 different, what we call broadly speaking, types of components. You've got regional components, so that's geographic based. So it might be, New South Wales, or it might be Cunnamulla. There could be branches, it could be state divisions. And then you've got demographics, so that's like women in or young people. And then you've got expertise based, which are about refining into something. So it might be, in surgery. Oh, sorry, let me think. Okay, now it might be a vet and it might be into cattle, for example. And then you've got impact. And impact is about the business of the association. So that's about the groups that run the association, like the board. Does that make sense? So not every association needs every one of these types. And in fact, sometimes they break it up. I'm working with one client at the moment. I'm actually going to see if I can bring up the list of types of components. We actually found out that we segmented down their components much more in a much more detailed manner. And what we found, and I'm trying to find the list here, I can do it without naming the guilty. So they had clinical or procedure based, public health type groups, industry and professional development for the business of running the practices. So they actually broke it down even more detailed than this. But one of the reasons that we do this is regional components, for example, operate very differently than expertise. Regional components tend to have more face-to-face events. They're more about local connectivity, whereas expertise-based associations tend to have a more of a broader, like it might be all of Australia, it might be international, lots of stuff happen online. They've got different reasons for existing. Now, what we're finding, generally speaking at the moment, is demographic and expertise components are doing really well. Regional components, with some exceptions, aren't doing so well, but for everybody, how members want to engage with those components is shifting dramatically. People are sick of the bureaucracy. No one joins a component because they want to sit in a meeting for 2 hours to talk about what color the wall should be painted. People get involved with components because they want to create an impact. So when you're setting up your membership model and you're figuring out what components that you need, the other thing, if you want to create a membership model that really works, is you've got to figure out what are the pathways in. What are your, if someone wants to sit on a position, how do we make it easy, make it simple, use our technology so that members are excited about getting involved? What ad hoc volunteering opportunities can we create that will be a segue from an uninvolved member into an involved member, so we keep the pathway of volunteering going? Because I know a lot of people don't tend to talk about this when they're discussing membership models, but this is the essence of your community. This is the building blocks of your community. And this has to go into any kind of conversation about this to understand. And yes, there are associations out there who are like, well, we don't want anything to do with our members. Frankly, they get stuff. And if they don't like it, they can get stuffed. But for the vast majority of associations, these are the members that actually create a powerhouse that lets you move forward, particularly around advocacy and things like that. What are your thoughts on that? Any questions? Because this is a big, big space and I'm kind of skimming through it really fast. So
Can I just say,
Sorry.
oh, sorry, go on, Louise.
No, you go, Alison.
I was just going to say one of the, very quickly, because we've got colleges, we've got member groups, we've got interest groups. And what we find is we ask for their involvement to help us with advocacy, for example. And then they ask for reward and recognition. And that's been a tough balance. Like, you keep asking us questions. How are you going to financially acknowledge our commitment? So yeah, it's complex.
it is, and it's interesting. I spent half my life doing focus groups at the moment. Like it's nuts. And yes, the nature of volunteering has changed and more people are reaching out for some kind of reward for volunteering. And a lot of people default to financial and they say, oh, well, I should be paid because I've been sitting on this committee for 5 years. But that's where I think where there's opportunities to leverage the sense of belonging and impact. Because I notice, Kirsten, you talk about the nature of impact changing. We've seen there's less call for financial compensation when there's a direct connection to impact. So when people can see my involvement on the committee has led to less incidences of child suicide over here, thinking of some of the clients we work with, one of the guys that we dealt with in an engineering one, who's a long-term volunteer. And I remember in a focus group, he said, I love the fact that every single time I drive to work, I drive past the areas that we've worked and I feel good every day because I can see how my involvement in the association made a difference. And so it's reframing. Yeah, so that's when we talk about impact is what is the tangible positive difference the association makes, or and more importantly, from an engagement perspective, helping members to connect with what's the tangible positive difference their volunteering contribution is making. And it's really interesting when you reframe that and you tap into passion for purpose, not only does it get more engagement, but it gets more engagement from younger people. But where we've seen a lot of associations are having a challenge is associations, there was a big centralization push. And I must admit I was guilty. I love the idea. It's like communism, probably works in theory, but in practice, it's challenging because when you centralize, you sometimes remove some of the life from it, and it becomes about the rules. Our rules is that every committee must submit their events 1 year in advance. No, you can't have a Christmas party next month. You got to plan it 12 months ahead. It becomes very rigid and it loses that sense of community connectivity, responsiveness, and that's the bit you don't want to lose. And so when you're looking at setting up this, it's how do we transcend the bureaucracy? How do we simplify engagement? And we connect each of our volunteers to the impact that they can make against our purpose. And that's where I bring in the other word, alignment. We've talked right at the beginning. Why do we have members? What is the purpose that our collective are trying to achieve? Then how can we align everything that we're doing to achieve that so that one volunteer down here can see how they're contributing to that top level impact? That's where policy and advocacy can be really good if they can translate it. Because if you've got something that says, do you want to join our policy committee? Well, I don't know. Am I an insomniac who needs a cure? But if you instead said, right, we'll put you on a list. So when we have an issue come up that's relevant for you, we'll reach out. And here's an issue, next week, new legislation is being tabled that is going to allow, and thinking psychology, allow AI psychologists to treat children. Would you like to be part of the group that are actually going to be providing a counter argument for why that policy is unwise? Suddenly, you're going to have a whole heap of members going, well, yes, I want to be part of this, because they can see a reason. You've tapped into a cause. And that's the associations who are doing well at the moment. They connected through.
Linda, I was just going to say, we're sort of deep in shifts in this area. So when we brought in our new constitution, it was part of that was moving away from regional. So we've always had state councils, which was a sort of hangover from state-based organisations previously. And everything was very state-based. And what we've now done is created sort of we're in the middle of 3 tiers of engagement. So we've still got local network groups to do on the ground events and activities. but we've introduced special interest groups for sectors, so corporate communicators, government communicators, etc. And we're in the process of looking at expertise, like crisis comms, sustainability, sort of more topic-based ones as well. And the response has been great from the members.
Oh, they would love
They're
that.
excited, yeah.
I can actually see that journey. You're on a journey that a lot of associations are on. So in the late 90s, early 2000s, a lot of people who had either independent state organizations or state physical branches, they've gone through this centralization. And then a lot of them have gone, okay, well, we're centralized now, but now we need a way to activate people. And a lot of it is shifting. So instead of state-based branches, they're saying, well, actually, no, where, for example, in some areas, there's state-based legislation differs, they'll have an advocacy committee for that state whose job is to identify issues and help. But it's not a branch, it's related to a particular task. So I think that's great. That's great. And that's really tapping into where a lot of people are going. And it takes the bureaucracy. You don't want to have separate organizations in every state who all have to pay for a marketing manager and a CEO and everything. And also you've got a bureaucracy that sits behind that. How good is it to have these groups, no matter what the components happen to be, that are purpose orientated and more nimble?
Yeah, and it gives us, we're tiny headcount, we're only 2.5 people. So it gives us committees and member committees that can actually, we can sort of extend our reach and capacity.
Oh, so you're going to be super excited when the agents come out shortly with AI.
Yes.
So for those who are unaware, so agents are where AI literally, and I actually have an AI sits on my computer and I can talk to it. And I can't do this yet, but when the agent's capacity comes out, I'll be able to say, I need a flight next Sydney, Sydney next Wednesday. I want you to find me a Qantas flight. I want you to book me a flight, put me in an aisle seat. I want the flight to leave no later than this, no sooner than this, and come back here. You'll be able to have agents who look after your members for special interest groups and things like that. So yes, you don't want to replace human interaction. Technology is an enabler of human-to-human connection. But what you will be able to do is have permanently on your site somebody who can answer any question that a volunteer might have, even if it's 2 a.m. in the morning, where they can talk to what looks like a real person. And it's already being used in associations. We recently, and you might have seen on the news, we put an AI board member or board advisor into the Real Estate Institute of New South Wales. And she has an avatar. Her name is Alice Ing, AI for short. And you can talk to her and because she's hooked into the financials, the constitution, the membership database, all the legislation, all the research, everything the association has produced, written or video for however many years. And you can talk to her to say, oh, Alice, if we took this position, what would the implications be? Currently looking at our membership performance year to date compared with the last 5 years, are we likely to meet budget? And you can talk to her like a real person, have a conversation. Now imagine being able to give that functionality to your members about how they can make an impact. And just picking up Kirsten too, you mentioned in the chat there, measuring that impact in dollars, absolutely. Sometimes it's really appropriate to do that. And there's lots of ways you can do it. I know there's people I know in this room who run events, but there's a lot of work being done in event legacy at the moment. So even if you're running an event in a particular location and it's a larger event, is there ability to create a legacy in that location that's related to the cause of your association that members who are attending the event can contribute to and see an impact greater than just their simply attendance at the event? There's lots of ways for you to create the opportunity for micro impact that aligns with your purpose. And these are things which, when it comes to a membership model, this human element we're talking about now is as critical as anything else we're speaking about. And it does kind of lead me into, we talked about traditional models, and I talked about the evolution and how some people are considering what we call open models, where there's no financial membership. You still have members, how that might look, but it's still that idea of that collective action. And just to contextualize it for you, what we're talking about at the moment is participation models, is where most associations are at right now at varying stages. So the philosophy is, a traditional model is you join and then you get stuff. If you're a member, you get stuff. If you're a non-member, you get nothing. A participation model says, well, actually, no, because we don't exist to recruit and retain members. We exist to advance the cause, a betterment of a profession, a sector, whatever it happens to be. So actually, we represent everyone in the profession or everyone in the sector. Everyone is welcome to come and play. But of course, if you're a member, you get a different experience. So imagine if your association was hosting a Taylor Swift concert. Everyone in your professional sector is welcome to play, but your members have got the backstage passes. Now, that is a really good philosophy from a revenue generation perspective and not just engagement. So if you look at the Australasian Institute of Mining and Metallurgy, when Stephen Durkin started there in 2017, he shifted them from a traditional mindset to a participation mindset and started marketing what they're doing beyond the membership base. And like with LinkedIn, non-financial members were a welcome part of the community. At that time, they were generating $0 per annum off their online training. And I think last year they did close to 4 million. And that's including 3 different technology iterations that are required to get that up and running. Interestingly, the byproduct of a participation mindset is increased financial membership growth because it appreciates that recruiting and retaining members is a lot like dating. You're not going to walk up to a stranger in the middle of the street and say, hey, want to get married? But that's a lot of what we do when we're marketing membership. A participation model says, no, we're going to engage. We're actually going to go and we're going to do stuff together. And then a natural step in that relationship will be that member to making that financial commitment to us because they've had a good experience. And that's what OSM is seen as, that growth. The open models are something that very, very few associations are in a position to execute. That is where you say, wow, we're making so much money of all of the activities we're doing to drive value and impact. Financial membership is such a minuscule part of our income. We're actually getting rid of it to remove the final barriers to people in our profession engaging with us. Now, there are a couple of associations out there for whom membership is less than 3% or less than 1% of their revenue who have that in mind. But I would say that's going to be extremely uncommon for the next 5 to 10 years. Because most associations have a heavy reliance on membership fees. Any questions on that? It's a hard philosophy for people to understand, particularly members. One of the things that I'll give you an example of a common traditional mindset, and this is, if you've got any kind of community building, this is important. I have a client in New Zealand, and when I went in to do some, damn it, I can't tell you what sector it is, but that's okay, New Zealand. I went in to do some work with them because in their sector, there's 2 online communities. There's a free one that's available to everyone. Then there's the association one. Now, the association one hasn't been performing particularly well, and they called me in to do some focus groups and interviews to understand how they could improve. Now, there was one lady who I interviewed who I think hit the nail on the head perfectly. When I asked her why she wasn't using the association community, despite the fact she's a very long-term member, very actively involved, and she said this. She said, first of all, I've got very little time in my life for adding on an additional social network to my existing social networks is a big deal. I'm not going to be adding on 2. I'm going to choose one. And she said, the other thing is when I go to an online community, I want to connect with the hive mind of everybody in our sector. And she said, when I go to the free community, the free public one, I do that and I can immediately connect with everybody. And she said, but if I go to the association one, before I've even logged in, you've shrunk that hive mind to only a small percentage of the sector. And I said to her, but aren't you concerned that as a member, by allowing non-members into the community, that they're giving away something that belongs to you? And she said, no. She said, as a member, what I value is the association facilitating my connection to the broader hive mind. I'm sure you'll find some other way to give me value, but by taking away the ability of those people to join our community, you've actually decreased the value to me. And that's the difference between the impact of a traditional and a participation mindset. A traditional mindset, you actually can end up restricting value because you're trying to provide value to members, but you're not getting the right value. Participation lets you connect. Talked about functions. So, and I'm just looking at the time, and I'm going to go through, I'm trying to make sure I've got all of your notes covered. There's a few in there. simplification of categories, and how do we come up with what the right categories are? These are the rules that I've developed over the years. And whenever anyone is proposing new membership categories to me, these are the ones that I go through. The first one is I go, is it aligned? Is it actually structured that by having these people as members, it's going to advance the purpose of the association? Is it intuitive? So if I'm looking at the list of categories, do I immediately know where my home is? Or are you using terms like affiliate, associate that have no meaning whatsoever to anyone out of the organization? I should gold, silver, bronze. Oh, I hate those labels. And if you use them, don't tell me, because not only are they basic, to put it in lack of a better word, they imply status and it's divisive. So intuitive, commonality. So everyone in that group has got to have a common set of needs or problems that they want you to solve. Students is a great group. Students who are about to graduate, these people, what are their challenges? They need the critical first step in their career. They need to understand what the pathways look like. They need to find a job. They get similar needs. So you want that. You don't want to have a student and a retired, because those groups, not only their needs different, but how you communicate to them is different. Valued. So each category needs to have a compelling value proposition the association can execute. Talking about value propositions, it is definitely not a more is better. Less is actually more when it comes to value. You're better off having distinct value propositions for each category that are smaller, that give someone powerful value. Because the problem when you have 26 different things that you offer is when someone's looking through, they go, oh, that's relevant. Oh, that's not. Oh, okay. On the whole, the association isn't really relevant to me. The other thing is, despite what we're trying to do with this session today, people can't remember a lot of information at once. So if I went up to a student and I'm talking to them about membership, I'm not going to tell them about everything we do. I'm going to say, do you know what? As a student, if you join our association, it's the best investment you're going to make in a successful career. We're going to help you to understand the pathways that you need. We're going to help you find a job that's going to give you the best first step into that career. And we're not just going to keep you up to date. We're going to bring you up to date with all the things that you didn't even know you needed to know. If I was talking to somebody who's about to retire, I would never say that. I'd say, oh, look, you're moving into retirement. We'd love to still have you as a member. Do you know what we'll be able to do? We'll be able to help you with creating a legacy, so that you can actually be remembered for the valuable work that you've put in. We're going to help you to give back to the sector by taking all that critical knowledge that you've still got in your head and helping you share it with the people who can take that forward. It's a different message. Does that make sense? And that's why we don't want to talk in terms of you get a magazine, you get events, you get a webinar, we have a website, we get a resources library. No one cares about those things because inherently they don't have value. Those are simply features. Value is a higher level. What is the positive impact you're going to make on the cause that's important to them? And it is important to differentiate that value. So for example, let's talk, if I got, is Lisa still in here? Trucks. If I'm talking where I've got businesses, a small business is generally, if it's a micro business, it's going to be smaller. And actually, let's go for one I'm really familiar with, plumbers. Not to be sexist, but, oh, okay, Tessa, no worries. But if you look at plumbing businesses, it's generally a guy on the tools, the woman sitting behind running the administration side of the business if it's a very small business. So if I'm coming up with a membership proposition to a plumber, I know that I've got to appeal to both of those groups, but I know they're going to be time poor. And one of the things we found when we did focus groups into that area is the women who are running the books are very isolated and they want to connect with each other. But if I was talking to a plumbing business who has got 150 staff, I'm going to use a very different approach. So it's nothing wrong with differentiating value to different membership categories so people are getting what they need from that. Naturally, the fees have got to be sustainable to the association. They've got to be fair to the members. Also, inclusivity is really important. Oh, I can unpack that. There's a few things here. I'll come back to it. It should reflect the broader sector. And also, you can't always do this through your top level categories. Your top level membership categories are basically your first slice of your segments. So you might have, you know, students or early career or 0 to 5 staff. The next level down, you need to do a lot of other segmentation. This is where your technology is really important. And let me see if I can find one here where I've done something I've used yesterday. So I'm going to share with you, when you're doing data for your membership, can everyone see that template on the screen? So this is an example of a template that I did with a client where we went through and we said, right, in order to personalize the membership experience, what data do we need from the organization and at the individual level? And how do we collect that data? Do we get it at sign up? Do we collect it soon after sign up? And do we have to update it from time to time? This was just the first draft. I'm really happy to send this through to anybody who wants it. Let me just put here. Do you guys want to copy that? So this is something that you can build on to understand what do we need to be able to tailor the membership experience for people. And that's when we talk about inclusivity. The reason I say that is because some groups can unintentionally be marginalized or excluded. And I'm going to give you an example is, okay, I was doing focus groups for, let's say, a health-based association. And there was a lot of focus groups, big organization. I think it was about 16 of them. And I was talking with a culturally and linguistically diverse group. So these are all people who have come from overseas and got the required approvals to be able to operate in Australia. Now, every single one of those people had previously been a member of the association and was no longer a member. And I asked them, I said, oh, look, all you guys are past members. That's really interesting because it's the entire group. Can you tell me why? And every single person had the same response. They said, because we didn't feel welcome. We just didn't really feel that they wanted us there. I mean, the association says on all of its literature, it's big on inclusivity and everything, but we didn't see it. And the very next group I had was a group of their senior volunteer leaders, people who ran the branches and things like that. And during the course of the focus group, I actually put it to them. I said, oh, look, I had a chat with the culturally and linguistically diverse group. And they said that they weren't members any longer because they felt really unwelcome when they came to events. And at this point, this lady spoke up, and she was someone who'd been a volunteer of the association for many years, very high profile. And she actually said, oh, we don't really want them, do we? We don't really want them there. And I just about fell off my chair because that showed that even though the association spoke at a staff level about inclusivity being important, it wasn't being executed. And it showed that there was some work to be done. And I've seen that also in First Nations groups very, very strongly. And so if you do your segmentation, understanding if people are from these groups that tend to be marginalized, so that you can come up with strategies to track their engagement and to support them to become more involved in the association is really important part of this as well. So I do jump onto that bandwagon because I feel very strongly about it. So we've got inclusive, manageable, administratively easy to manage is one that's often overlooked. And from both the member and the staff perspective, if you've got a lot of administrative work done to maintain membership, that needs to be either automated or your actual fundamental rules to be reviewed. And typical rules that people have abandoned in droves. Does anyone here have approvals still required for membership? Or you need to be nominated by 1 or 2 members? That belongs in the dark ages, should never be done anymore. All you need to do is to update your terms and conditions. It says that the board at any time, if they find a member at their sole discretion to have done something that brings the association to disrepute, they can kick them out at any time. The idea that people have to provide certain documentation unless it's legally required, is there an easier way to do that? Anything you can do. So if you have organizational memberships, one of the things that I find is terrible from the member's perspective is when the association needs the member to go out and gather a whole heap of data. If there is an organizational membership being signed up, the membership member, primary contact, should be able to give you the list, and you have processes for engaging with all of those people. So look at ways to streamline that through automation as much as possible. When it comes to automation, has anyone here used Olina Limmer from MemberBoat? And what have you thought of Olina? Louise, you've used her?
Just haven't used her directly, but have spoken with her a lot about stuff and are looking at using her for something. But she's got some great ideas in terms of automation and marketing.
Yeah, Alina, and I'm going to put her into the chat. Alina from Memberboat, she is fabulous. She'll come in and write all of your automation. And it's good if you're looking to get started, you can come get her in and say, like, what automation should we do first? Because you can't do everything. So what are the big rocks that you can get in first? And she'll even write it, and she writes really well, sets it all up in the system. It's really worthwhile. The last thing I'm going to talk about with membership there is it's got to be scalable. I've had several times where associations have almost died because of their success. It's almost bankrupted them, because thinking of one in particular, where they went from 150 members to 2,500 members in about 8 months because their particular sector suddenly took off. Their membership program wasn't scalable. It was so time intensive that it almost knocked them over because they couldn't service. So when you are putting in place your technology, think of, right, if we suddenly had an influx of members, could we manage it? So this is the rules that we use. And the other thing is, don't be scared by this slide, and I will send it to you, but there are so many different options when you're doing your structures. Test it. One of the things that a few of you brought up is, how do we bring people on this journey and how do we do the transition? This is the area where if you co-create, you come up with solutions and be transparent about the fact that you're reviewing your models, members love it. And not just members, but the staff team. So a typical process that we do is, if we're doing a review of a membership model, first we catch up, we figure out what's the problem we're solving. Is it a fundamental model? Is it a category review? Is it a component review? Figure out where the problem is. But then, and I'll give you the process we're using with one particular client at the moment. We went out and we did a survey of all of the members to understand where the problems were, and also to understand what the members believe the importance, effectiveness were and different benefits, so we could see what the market segments were. Then we did some focus groups to validate that. Then we came back and we spoke with the board and the leadership team. Sorry, those focus groups were with both members and some staff, just to validate the survey results. So we came back and we were able to say, look, this is broadly speaking what the problem is. You do need a fundamental review of your membership categories, and your components are an issue. Your NPS score is one of the NPS scores was -85. So on a score of -100 to +100, you don't get much worse than that. So we're actually able to come up and say, here's what it could look like. Funny enough, then they sent us off to do some more focus groups where we ended up talking to every single staff member, as well as huge areas of their members, to understand and bring the members on board to say, look, we're doing this membership model review. What are your thoughts? What could it look like? What should it look like? What's your biggest problem with it right now? And what would you love to see happen? And we're very open and transparent with the membership base that we're doing this review, we're doing these consultations, we're doing the surveys, and they could see it wasn't just being sprung on them. They could see, as we were very open, that the voices of the members have to be reflected into the solutions. We're at the stage now where we've come up with a concept, and I'm really excited about it because we've got all of the evidence to say this is what needs to happen. And that concept has been something that's been collaboratively developed. And that's when you talk about transitioning people across, you can't just work in isolation and then spring it on someone, because people's first reaction to change is to resist. But if people see that there's a problem, which we saw when we did the survey, and we're actually able to demonstrate really clearly to the board that they were going to have an immense issue with retention, their members were deeply unhappy, there was a deep dissatisfaction with the way that the membership was currently structured, amongst other things, particularly their volunteer management. They were then more invested in helping us to come up with a solution. The board was one of the groups that we did in the focus group to get their feedback. Everybody felt consulted. We've come up with the concept. Once that concept is approved by the board, the next step as we go into implementation is co-creation of what the solution looks like, because they've got a lot of special interest groups. They've got so many different components. We're actually involving the leadership of those components to develop the final outcome. And I know it feels unwieldy and it's a lot of steps, but when people have been part of the process, it's a seamless move from concept through to transition and implementation. If you don't do that, you'll often find that the implementation will never happen. Like, I think you found out, I mean, who was saying there, the branding got stopped right at the last minute there, Alison, so.
Can I
That
just
all
add to that though, we'd done years and years of consultation with our members, but because they would change seats, so for our college chairs would move on, it was a case of a little bit of Chinese whispers. They would disseminate the messaging that they wanted to disseminate down to their committees, and or not pass on the discussions.
Yeah, we do an accelerated process because we know people change positions. This whole process that I've just outlined has actually been 5 months.
Great.
And because you're right, you've picked the nail on the head. You've absolutely hit on the head there. Because volunteer leaders do change, you've got to get people when it's absolutely optimal. Any comments, questions so far?
I just wanted to kind of that other slide when you talked about sustainability, financial sustainability. How do you go about the change when I guess you'll be doing it based on data, but like the impact or like the risk of a negative impact on the membership revenue?
Oh, that's interesting, because one of the concepts we've come up with recently, which is the recommended one, is a $1 million negative impact. So when you look at sustainability, the factors I take into account are this. One, I do extrapolate out a 5-year or even longer forecast that if we do nothing, what is the impact? Because often when associations are doing a membership review, there's some retention issues going on. And in fact, if you look at our website, I used Claude to write a little calculator for extrapolating 5-year forecast for membership. So, and that's pretty simple to do. You get your members at the beginning of a year, members at the end of the year, number of new members who joined. That'll enable you to work out your retention rate. And you then just cycle that out. Right, if we got that same retention rate, that same number of new members for the next 5 years, what is that going to look like? And that can actually then show a decline. I also try and show, well, what would be the likely impact if we did this on retention, on membership growth, but also the other impacts. For example, if you were to reduce barriers to people engaging in, say, components that you have, whether it be interest area components or whatever, and those components generate revenue from you from events and things like that, is there additional revenue that's going to be created through having not only more members, but more members engaging? So you can do some financial modeling, and how good it is depends on the data sets you've got available to you. But it does make boards feel better to see that. One of the other things that I've done as well when we're trying to make an argument through the boards is we compare with other like organizations. So we'll look internationally, we'll bring up what the fee structures are, engagements, market share. So at the moment, a lot of associations are struggling with declining market share. So if you can show, right, well, associations who are like us, who have this fee structure, or are in other countries, what's their market share impact? Have they gone through this, and what's it look like? Because people love a bit of case study evidence to bring up behind it as well.
Yeah. Thank you.
Every board's a bit different too, because some boards, they don't want the details and others want it all. So it's I also find it's quite helpful to ask the people making the decisions what data they need for them to be comfortable making a decision on it. Hey, Brendan, how are you going? You missed out. I was going to use you for an example on something before, but now that value proposition side of things as well, we did talk about, and you can see here, differentiating value by career stage, differentiating value by seniority and size of organization. But there's so many other different ways that you can segment. And sometimes the same piece of information you can segment easily. Now, I think Louise is across this, but say, for example, you had the federal budget come out and you have different market segments. You've got leaders, managers, doers, you've got people who are students all the way through to retired. There's nothing to stop you from uploading that into ChatGPT and saying, write me a LinkedIn post that's relevant for the senior leaders in our sector. Then you might say, create a TikTok video using @InVideo, because ChatGPT can talk to it to create videos that talks about why students in our profession should care about this federal budget in 2 minutes or less. And that you can take one piece of data now and quite easily segment that into lots of different areas and send out some information as appropriate to them. So this is where, if you're executing your membership model and you want to deliver value, value isn't having the information. It's not having the offer. It's about communicating it into such a way to somebody that they see you and perceive you as valuable. It's why advocacy suffers, because a lot of associations, particularly in Australia and New Zealand, do fabulous work on advocacy and are really crap about telling their members how incredible they are because you're so busy doing the good work. So how can you communicate into such a way that members will get it? Does that make sense? All right. Oh gosh, sorry, I'm looking at the time now, and I know we've only got 20 minutes left. I'm having a quick look through all the things you guys want to talk about. We've covered components, transition, we've got to get to fee structure. Okay, so fee structures. There's a couple of you want to talk about fee structures. So there's different ways you can price. Membership categories are very different from pricing models. So pricing models, we talked at the beginning about annualized subscription, etc. Those are fairly straightforward. If members are going to pay a fee, I've got to say I'm definitely, with few exceptions, in the direct debit monthly. But there are other models. So who here knows Answers for Associations? I'm guessing you must, because you registered through them to come here. Did you know that Answers is actually using a vendor subsidized model? So a vendor subsidized model says we want to have as few barriers between us and serving those we serve as possible, and we believe financial membership fees are a barrier to that. So what vendor subsidized fee models do is they say, actually, so in Answers' case, we serve associations. We want to be able to provide as much as we can for free. So we will allow vendors to come in, but not in the typical sponsorship arrangement. First of all, they got to jump through some hoops. I know in Answers' case, it has a waiting list of people who'd like to partner who haven't been able to get in because they haven't jumped through the hoops. You've got to have a great service. It's got to be recommended by a certain number of associations. You've got to specialize in that particular area, demonstrate expertise. So a leader from MemberBoat's one of the members, of vendors. So they have a small group of vendors who are committed to the same ideology, and they contribute a monthly membership fee it's an annualized fee paid monthly that actually funds the work of the association. And that's an example of the alternate funding models that associations are doing who want to move away from that traditional member has to pay. Does that make sense? Vendor funded models, one of the hardest thing about them is ensuring that the needs of the core are prioritized and always take precedence. So the selection of the right vendors is really important. Associations are going to have really tight terms and conditions and be really firm at getting rid of people who don't align with their ideology. So that's one. Looking at, is there a completely different approach we can take? Renewal periods. Okay, does anyone here want to share what renewal period they are? Are you single date? Every year, everyone renews on the 30th of June. Are you anniversary? So 12 months after you did. Calendar year, quarterly, what are you?
Calendar year.
Anniversary.
Anniversary. Yep. Whose anniversary here? So quite a few. How do you find it? Who here loves their renewal period or dislikes it? Any strong feelings? Okay, so that's good. Some people really, really hate it. But at the moment, the way tech is going, if you've got the right tech to be able to build in the automation, to have multiple points of contact, anniversary date is fantastic. Where associations don't have the right tech to be able to enable that, or they have certain external factors that impact, for example, I would never send like retail. I would never have a calendar year for retail because you'll never be able to get a hold of them around Christmas. Then they might be looking at a single date renewal. So pricing, I know that there used to be back in the 80s and before, it was one size, you pay a fee to join, it's the same fee for everybody. When tiered pricing came in, it was based on fairness and also outcome. If I'm a big organization, I can afford a higher fee, but also if there's advocacy, in most cases, I'm going to benefit in real dollar terms more than, say, a really tiny person. So that's when we saw tiered pricing come in. And we've also now seen there's a lot of, concessional pricing as well, which is really, really relevant, particularly for younger members. For younger members, affordability across all of the research we've done is huge. So that's just straight up pricing. But something that's being used really effectively at the moment is freemium, the free trial membership, where you sign up for 3 months, and if you like it, you continue. A lot of associations have been playing with that with considerable success in those associations who've got a lot of automation sitting around it to make sure that that new member integration during that trial period has been really strong. And Serge, you're right, anniversary spreads the cash flow and the workflow if you're doing a lot of personal follow-up. But I know a few associations that chop and change between the two. I'm going to, all right, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this given the time, and I want to have another section I want to cover, but I will say this. Who here has membership salespeople dedicated in their organization? People whose only job is to sell membership. 1, 2. All right. Sales isn't a dirty word. If you genuinely believe someone's better off as a member than a non-member, then you should have a sales function in your organization. And a lot of associations now are employing multiple types of business development function. So automation going out with triggers. So say, for example, somebody clicked on a particular article, they might get an invitation to join or go to an event on that particular topic that comes out a couple of days after. There's a lot of people building in automation that is based around these triggers to try and identify who might be good prospects. Having somebody who's responsible for selling membership doesn't always mean that person's sitting there on the phone picking it up, although it does in some cases. I have a client in London, and they're a global client. Their membership salesperson spends literally 90% of their day on LinkedIn, connecting to people, having conversations with people, finding people who sit in different countries who could be prospects for membership, and it's extremely profitable. A good membership salesperson should be returning far more than the cost of their salary in membership revenue and events revenue and product revenue, because they're not just selling the membership. So having lots of different sales channels and having dedicated sales channels is really important. I'm not going to go through the revenue ideas because I wanted to get to this slide, which talks about the implementation. So when you're doing a big membership model transition, it's not business as usual. You need to make sure it's resourced. And one of the big issues that we find is a lot of boards are like, oh, that's all right, you can do it on top of your existing full-time workload. Don't be afraid to seek external assistance or to employ on a contract people to be able to help with that transition. And I know some people say, oh, it's a cost to get in some contract person to help us manage, but it's often a saving because that way it can be done in a really quick time frame. And if it drags on for years, it often doesn't happen. When you are looking at doing it, these are the areas that you need to focus on. First of all, you need a great transition plan with the supporting budget behind it. Very, very important element is the communications to bring everybody on board and make them feel that they're part of co-creating the solution. Your governance, constitution, and board alignment are really important. Review your constitution. There's nothing wrong with having to change your constitution. It's not that hard. And if you can, extract from the constitution as much of the membership as you can. So, for example, instead of having a prescriptive constitution that says you will have these categories and this is the value they'll get, why not put something to the membership that have the categories and value are such that will be determined from the board from time to time? So just taking a rod off your back for future. You want to be able to, when part of your transitional planning is looking at your volunteer management component alignment, and not just at the rules around that, but identifying what are the components, why do we have them, and how can we ensure they're successful. That includes outlining what are your volunteering pathways, and not just the rules, but how do we get people excited and motivated, and how can we support them? Volunteering is changing. People are after short, sharp volunteer engagement opportunities. How do you market them? one of the big things that associations used to do is just put up and say, we want volunteers, let us know. Why not have a section on your website that lists opportunities as a job ad? Here's your opportunity. We need somebody to help us out at this event next week. This is a great opportunity for you to meet members and raise your profile, but also there's parking and food provided, because I don't know why those two things always impact. And of course, you'll be able to attend the event for free. So tell them what's expected of them. One of the biggest things that people fear right now in our world of social media is the fact that global humiliation is a tweet away. So people are afraid of doing what they don't know how to do. So let them know what it is that's required. And if it is complex, let them know that training is going to be provided and onboarding, and have that available. Staff capability, capacity, and culture. Now, we talked about associations being collectives of people coming together to advance a cause of mutual interest. You've paid staff for the oil that actually greases that process and makes it happen. And do you know, I've been doing this for a long time, and in all of the research, one of the things that gives me the most confidence as to whether an association is going to be successful or not, when I'm looking at an association, is a relationship between the board and the CEO and the staff. What's the culture like? And sometimes, particularly if you're moving from a traditional to a participation model, you have to look at the cultural shift that's going to have to happen. Because if people have been used to, oh, you're not a member, go away, we only want members. If they're used to that ideology, you've got to take them on that journey to shift it to be enthusiastic about serving the whole sector. And we're not just about being member-centric, we're profession-centric, we're cause-centric. Because we're not about just recruiting and retaining members. We're actually here about making a tangible, positive difference to the world. And then that comes through into your branding, your publications, and your communications alignment. Particularly, I've got to strongly advise what I talked about before, getting in AI to enable you to segment different communications. So the right message isn't just getting to the right groups, it's getting to them the right way where they're going to read it. You'll need to have a plan in there with your membership about how do you actually understand what that value proposition is. Does that mean you've got to start doing things, do things differently, or stop doing certain things? Don't be afraid to stop doing things and putting that into the plan. Driving that community, that comes back into, it's not just about the volunteers, it's about how do we help our members to connect with each other. So do you need that? If one of your functions is community building, you want to get it in there. Processes and automation. Once you've got all of this stuff above, you know what's going to happen. Think about what in there don't I need to do? What in there can I get a process for it? Even if you get someone like Alina in to say, right, these are the different things that we want to set up, do it, because you're going to be quicker than I am. And this comes into the technology, data, and AI. And for all of this stuff, have reporting. And for each of these items, ask yourself just this question: how do I know that I've been successful? What does success look like in terms of driving community and belonging, or leveraging technology, data, and AI? And then report against that so that you can actually pat yourself on the back and say, holy crap, I've done something that's really challenging and coordinated it and got it to a successful end. Because what we've talked about today isn't an easy process, because you're not talking about just managing an association, you're talking about managing people. And you need to have a way on that journey to understand the impact that you're making. Does that all make sense? Is there any other questions? Any questions? Because I know that a few people have talked about implementation and transition on that evolution. Are there any questions? And I think, Kylie, you'd had one in there. Is there anything else? Any specific questions you've got? Because I've done a lot of these, and I might have an answer.
I think my question is, we've got a significant attrition at the moment, and budgets are very, okay, just say negative, basically. So I think for me, it's just the overwhelm of how to make the incremental change rather than the whole piece at once, and seeing that, like, where to start through. Just, I mean, where I've managed to convince people to go towards a participation model, because then that sells our CPD to non-members and they're open for that for revenue generation. But it's a bigger thing than just revenue generation.
Yeah, it's more than revenue generation is a byproduct doing everything else successfully. do you know if you're in a situation where you've got significant retention issues and budget is an issue, what you're looking for is not a membership model review. What you're looking for is to identify what is the one thing that is going to shift the dial quickly. And this is, I know this situation very well. So the question, and this is something you can do internally, but what I normally do is I go in and talk to as many people as I can, and I ask them one question. If you could change anything about our organization, what would it be? Now, I'll tell you what I do, and feel free to copy this. So generally when I go in, I talk to the board, I talk to the staff, I talk to members, and if they allow me to, I'll talk to non-members. And I can type faster than I can talk. I take a transcript of every single conversation that I have. And then I'll both manually look through it, but I also upload it into AI, into ChatGPT, because I've got training turned off so my data doesn't get used. And I'll say, what are the common themes here? And I'll ask it and say, given this, what is the top 3 things the association could do that will immediately make an impact on revenue, on retention? And do you know what? I've done more of these than I think I could go back and count. And there's not been a time where there wasn't at least 2 or 3 strong things that, if addressed, would shift that dial. And sometimes they're really hard things. Like I know there's an organization I'm dealing with at the moment where they're turning their members off because their members want to be part of a community and they want to be part of this particular sector. But the association is so rigid and bureaucratic. And it is one of those ones that say, you know, you need to organize your events a year ahead. I need your events list. And what that's meant is that all of these people who were very loyal to the association, long-term members, are actually organizing their own events outside and with other parties, and they're pulling away. And so when you ask them, they're sad. They're like, I loved the association. I've been a member, but they're doing it, getting us to do these things that don't make any sense. I feel betrayed. We're just going over here now. And they don't want to do that. And so what the association needs to do is they need a fundamental shift in the way that they engage with their members. But if they were to make that shift, and we have come up with a way that they can decisively demonstrate this, the members will come, the engagement will come back in, and the revenue will go up, both in terms of membership and events registration. But figure out what problem you're solving, I guess, is the upshot from this, and ask that question. The other questions that I ask, because if there's usually 3, if you're running a focus group of 6 people, you've usually got time for 3, what I call starter questions. So always start with, if you could change anything, what could it be? Then I will normally ask, if you were running the association and you could only do 3 things in the next 2 years, what are the 3 things that would be on your list of the only things that get done? Because it gives you a different way to present the question. And the last question differs depending on whether it's a member or a staff member or a board member. But if I'm talking to a member, I'll often ask, what is it that you value the most about the association? Why are you a member? And the reason I ask that is because then you can help to distill what it is we don't need to be doing anymore. Because when you ask that question to enough members, you start to get a picture of what's important, which by default tells you what's not important. And then you can actually maybe cut some costs. And I did do that for a client in New Zealand. I remember I was delivering a strategic planning day, and we're going to the segmentation. And there was only a small group. We had their entire board and a couple of staff there. And we went through, and I was matching the products that they had against their market segments. And we ended up with this research project. And I said, who's this research project for? We haven't been able to match this up to anybody. And there was some discussion. They said, well, that's for a group that broke away from us a couple of years ago, but we still keep doing the research project because we've always done it. And I said, can I actually just here with every decision maker in the room, can we have a vote and agree that this will never run again, and any work on it is to cease immediately because you don't need to do it anymore? And it passed, and this woman started crying. And I said, what's the matter? Because she's the one who actually ran the project. She's like, thank you. You have no idea how much time you've just given me back. So you want to be actively looking for what we can stop. And I know your organization has a lot of things that's going on. There could be some savings. I hope that helps. Any other questions?
I just want to say thank you. That was a wonderful response.
Oh, phew, good. Feel free to use it like that. It really helps just to talk to your members. And I know it seems obvious. Younger members as well. That what do you hate about our association? That was one of the best events we've ever done. It was so much fun. You just got to get it to set the right tone at the beginning. Any other questions before we wrap up? So did everybody get what you're looking for today, or enough support where you're going to be able to move forward?
It's been really helpful. Thank you.
No worries. I will.
Yes,
And I
thank
think-
you.
Thank you. I think Emily's here and she's going to send an email out to everybody. But one of the things, and we'll do is we'll send a link to the webinar, which was much more of a formal presentation going through the paper. And we'll also send you a copy of the white paper as well. So you'll have all of the back notes. But I thought this, with our group size, the webinar I couldn't do it because we had like 100 and whatever people. But for this, I thought it was better to face-to-face. Awesome. All right. Well, if you have any questions, I'm not falling off the planet. I am around. So please feel free to drop me an email anytime and I would be very, very happy to help. So good luck.